What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto becomes devil bounty hunter after death? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Naruto slowly made his way through the Raven Tail Guild, passing a few of its members but not speaking to any of them. Dressed in an open black hooded coat that reached his ankles, his features hidden, except for his blood-red eyes that seemed to shine. His hands, both of which rested lazily at his side, were wrapped up in bandages. He neglected a shirt underneath the coat, but he wore a pair of black pants, rolled up halfway to his knees, showing off more bandages on his left leg that reached his ankle. His shoes appeared to be custom-made sandals of some kind, not something anyone else would wear. "You called master?" Bowing low before Raventail's master, Naruto waited for a reply. "Ah, Naruto-chan, I'm glad you're here." Looking down at the youngest member in his guild, Ivan Dreyer smiled. "I have a special mission for you and Eberhard-chan. I want you to both travel to one of our bases near Magnolia Town. It seems some naughty person reported us to Fairy Tail, and they sent someone to clean the base up." Grinning madly, the man took a few steps towards the young boy. "Word is that my father sent a team of some of his new up-and-coming mages. I want you to gauge their strength for me, Naruto-chan." "Is that all, master?" Naruto questioned. "Yes, now off with you, boy." Ivan smiled madly as Naruto walked away. "It's a shame, Naruto-chan. I had grown quite fond of you, but you're more trouble than you're worth." Later that day, two figures walked down a dirt road. In the distance was a small town. Neither spoke for a while until they were just a mile from the town. "Shouldn't be too hard, huh, Naruto-san?" A large man smiled down at his young companion. "Killing a couple of fairies, master sure does hate them, don't you think?" "Yes," Naruto replied simply, not bothering to look up at the older man. Eberhard was a huge man, in both height and width, easily towering over anyone the boy had met before. His face was held in a constant smile, like it was frozen or he was wearing a mask, and his chin was covered in a prominent and jet-black scruffy beard that reached his equally dark sideburns. As for a hairstyle, the man was very unoriginal with a traditional clean cut. "We will be arriving soon. Tonight we will discreetly destroy the base. Tomorrow we find the fairy tale mages, and then you can dispose of them. You're not going to take part of the festivities again, Naruto-san?" The giant man shook his head. "I just don't understand what you don't like about killing, Naruto-san." "It's too sorrowful," Naruto responded quietly. "You sure are an odd one, Naruto-san." Ignoring the comment, Naruto continued making his way to the town, Eberhard only a few feet behind him. "Looks like they would make it just in time for the sun to set." Erza sighed as she looked out the window of the hotel she was staying in. Currently she was sharing it with Natsu and Gray. They had shown up in this town to scare away the dark mages that were using this place as a base of operations, but the second they had shown up the cowards had ran for the hills. She knew that the mission had been low-ranked, but she wasn't expecting it to have been this easy, and the fact that it was so close to Magnolia Town, in her mind something wasn't adding up. The base the mages were using was pretty obvious as well. She was actually surprised nobody had reported it earlier. The sound of something breaking shook Erza's concentration. Gray did it. She heard Natsu call. Shaking her head, Erza went back to staring out the window, pondering about the mission. There was one other thing bothering her. The symbol that she had seen at the Dark Mage's abandoned hideout looked familiar. In fact, if Erza didn't know any better she would have said it was Fairy Tail, but that was impossible. Sure, the design had been similar, but there was an obvious difference. Instead of a fairy, the Dark Guild's symbol had consisted of a raven. As concerned as she was, Erza had sent a letter back to the guild describing her findings. She hoped the master received it and sent word soon. Something strange was definitely going on. Hearing another crash, Erza sighed. Standing up, she decided to go see what the two troublemakers were up to. "Fairy Tail, master, is there something bothering you?" Gildarts looked over at the surprisingly short Makarov, watching as the man frantically read over a letter that was just delivered to him. Reading over the letter once more, Makarov sighed. "I'm afraid the team we sent to deal with the dark mages may be in great danger." Handing the letter over to his strongest mage, Makarov watched as the mont's eyes widened. "I'm afraid that this may be a trap set up by Ivan." Standing up abruptly, Gildarts seemed to have a bit of fire in his eyes. "Master, let me go as backup. I won't let Ivan get away with this." Watching Gildarts, Makarov nodded. "Go then." Nodding Gildarts started to leave immediately when Makarov called out to him. Anyone Ivan sent is sure to be dangerous, don't underestimate them. Naruto-san, is that them? Eberhard asked with a wide smile on his face. The large man was pointing at a group of 3, all around the same age. Looking in the direction the man was pointing, Naruto immediately recognized the girl dressed in armor with a sword strapped to her side. Erza. She was a mage with rapidly increasing fame. The giant beside him scratched his chin. They're all just a bunch of kids. Underestimating them would be foolish. Looking back at the group, Naruto's eyes narrowed. Careful of the one with pink hair, something is off about him. Glancing down at his partner, Eberhard shrugged. The kid was weird, almost as weird as he was. From previous mission the man had with Naruto, he had learned that the blonde didn't really care for fighting. In fact, he tried to ignore it as much as possible. Naruto had always let Eberhard do the fighting, not that the giant minded, he enjoyed it actually. The one time he had seen the blonde fight, it had been over in a blink of an eye, before Eberhard even had time to notice Naruto was standing over a corpse, apologizing to it. Eberhard shrugged. Naruto was strange, but he was deadly, and he respected that. Now it was time to deal with the fairies. Erza. Natsu whined. How much longer do we have to stay here? Crossing his arms, Natsu pouted slightly as looked up at the red-haired girl. This place is boring. Natsu, I already told you. Erza crossed her arms as she looked down at the younger boy. We have to make sure the dark mages don't show back up. Beside them, Gray muttered something under his breath, causing Natsu to turn on him. What did you say? Natsu shouted. Erza sighed as the two started to bicker. Ready to interrupt them, Erza felt someone approaching them. Natsu, Gray, she said sternly, gaining both of their attention. Turning around, Erza watched a large bearded man approach them, followed by a smaller hooded figure. So these are the little fairies I get to crush. Eberhard spoke aloud as he approached the 3. It doesn't look as fun as I thought it was going to be. Putting her hand on her sword, Erza got ready for a fight. Natsu and Gray standing at the ready behind her. It seems you know who we are. Does that mean you are part of the Dark Guild that had a base here? Haha, that it does, little lady, that it does. Taking a little bow, Eberhard kept the smile on his face. You may call me Eberhard, representative from Raventail. Finally, Natsu shouted, some action. Charging forward before Erza could stop him, Natsu's fist ignited into flames. Cocking his fist back, the young dragon slayer got ready to finish the fight in one hit when the giant hand of Eberhard sent him skidding across the ground, finally coming to a stop several feet away. Fast. Erza, though in surprise, she had half expected Natsu's charge to catch the man off guard, but he didn't even bat an eyelash. Natsu. Gray. This guy isn't an amateur, we need to work together if we want to beat him. Glancing behind the giant, Erza warily watched the hooded figure behind him. Following her gaze, Eberhard kept the smile on his face, and chuckled. Don't worry about Naruto-san, he won't interfere. Grinning lecherously, Eberhard turned his attention back to Erza. You 3 are all fire dragons. Roar. Eberhard didn't get to finish as he was enveloped in ball of fire. Using his distraction to his advantage, Natsu had snuck around the man and unleashed one of his most powerful attacks on his unprotected back. Hey! Whipping the blood that had leaked from his busted lip, Natsu turned to Naruto. You're next. Naruto simply shook his head. You're a fool if you think that weak flame of yours would be enough to take down that giant. What? Turning back to Eberhard, Natsu watched stunned as the man was standing there with a smile on his face. His shirt had been burned off, revealing his muscular chest covered in tattoos, and on his right bicep the symbol for Raventail. A dragon slayer? Eberhard questioned out loud with a deep booming voice. This just got a little bit more interesting. Moving towards Natsu, Eberhard was surprised that the kid held his ground, ready to fight back against the bigger opponent. Ice make. Arrow. Feeling multiple sharp objects bounce off his back, Eberhard turned around, finding Gray behind him, holding his hands up, ready to unleash another volley of arrows. That didn't even hurt, Eberhard remarked, making Gray growl in frustration. Try this then. Ice make. Hammer. Turning his attention above him, Eberhard's eyebrows raised when he found a giant hammer floating above his head. Raising his hand to stop the hammer, Eberhard was caught off guard when Erza and Natsu came at him from both sides. You're wide open. Fire Dragon's Iron Fist. From the left side, Erza charged at him, dressed in black wing armor. She wielded a dangerous-looking sword in her hand, Reacting quickly, Eberhard reached up and grabbed Gray's ice hammer and flung it at Natsu with his full strength. Turning to Erza, he caught her sword just as she was preparing to thrust it at him. Trying to pull the blade from the giant's grip, Erza found it to be stuck as the man lifted her off the ground and threw her at Gray. Flying through the air, Erza found she couldn't stop as she collided with Gray. "Why, you alright, Erza?" Gray questioned from under her. Nodding her response, Erza stood up and watched as Natsu dusted the shattered pieces of Gray's hammer off of himself, and went to attack Eberhard again. Wincing slightly as Natsu was batted away like a fly. "Just what is that guy?" Gray questioned as he stood beside Erza. "I don't know, but," holding up her sword, Erza showed that it was covered in blood. "He must be using some kind of magic that makes him resilient to magic." Natsu grunted as he came to a skidding stop near Naruto. "What is this guy made of?" Natsu questioned aloud to himself. "Thick skin magic," Naruto replied, catching Natsu off guard. "It's a magic that makes the user's skin repel magic." "What?" Natsu questioned as he looked to the hooded boy. "Why are you helping me?" Naruto was silent for a minute before speaking. "My master simply wishes to see how strong Fairy Tail's new blood is, sorry." TCH. Natsu turned his attention back to the waiting Eberhard. "Weirdo," he announced before charging after Eberhard. This guy had thick skin, and could resist magic, but Natsu was a dragon slayer. His magic was designed to kill things that had skin 10 times as thick as this guy. Fire Dragon's Swordhorn. Natsu's whole body ignited as he charged Eberhard. Dodging the giant initial sweep, Natsu shouted, "That won't work on me again." Tacking Eberhard head first in the gut, Natsu surprised everyone by sending the man flying backwards through the air. Laughing aloud, Natsu watched as his opponent struggled to get back up to his feet, the smile gone from his face. "You little brat." Standing up, Eberhard began charging Natsu, the ground shaking with every step he took. "I'll kill you." Trying to get out the way, Natsu stumbled over his own feet, and fell on his ass. Watching with wide eyes as the giant approached, Natsu panicked as he tried to scramble out of the way. "Natsu!" Erza shouted as she watched the pink hair boy try to scramble to his feet. There wasn't any time to move. By the time she took her first step, the giant was already on top of the wide-eyed Natsu. "Damn it!" Gray shouted as the giant hadn't even been fazed by the ground that had been frozen underneath him. The young mage had been hoping to make him slip up, but the second his heavy feet stepped on the ice, it shattered under his great weight. Now he chased after Erza as they desperately tried to reach the panicked Natsu before any real damage could be done. Cocking his fist back, Eberhard smiled at the panicked Natsu. "End of the road for you, kid." He was going to make this punk pay for humiliating him like that. He was Eberhard the Invincible. His skin was impervious to all magic. After he was done with the Dragon Slayer, the other two would be a piece of cake. Naruto watched the scene unfolding before him and shook his head sadly. "You fool." It all happened in a flash for Natsu. 1 second he saw Eberhard bringing his giant fist down on his small body. The next he saw Eberhard was suspended in the air. Frothing at the mouth, his eyes rolled into the back of his head. "Natsu," Gildarts called softly. "Are you alright?" The boy's eyes widened. Standing in front of him was none other than Fairy Tail's strongest mage, Gildarts Clive. The man was holding Eberhard above his head with a single arm. He didn't even appear to be struggling. Sitting there in silence for a moment, Natsu's eye began to sparkle. "Why, you're so strong." Chuckling, Gildarts turned to the hooded Naruto. "So that just leaves you." Throwing Eberhard down at the boy's feet, Gildarts was impressed that the boy didn't even flinch. Locking eyes with the older man for a moment, Naruto simply shook his head. "You win. I'd rather not fight if I have to. Especially against Fairy Tail's strongest. You seriously think that I'll just let you wake up your partner and leave?" Gildarts stared down at the boy's unnatural red eyes. Thinking quickly, Naruto shook his head. "You're right, he'll only slow me down." Holding his bandaged hand out, Naruto grabbed hold of Eberhard's head. "Sorry." Gildarts watched in shock and curiosity as magical energies began to flow from Eberhard to Naruto, the boy's hand acting like a magic pump. Once the man was out of magic, his body began to thin, slowly disappearing completely, leaving nothing but the giant's clothes behind. Standing up, Naruto's hood fell off, revealing his blonde hair and red eyes filled with tears. Turning back to Gildarts, Naruto pulled his hood back up. "Now if you'll excuse me." Turning to leave, Naruto was stopped by Gildarts's voice. Wasn't he your ally? Ally? I don't know that word. Naruto's stare met Gildart's, their eyes locked, unable to look away from each other. As for his death, it was going to happen eventually, failing a mission is unacceptable. Gildart seemed dumbfounded. You're really okay working under such strict rules? Living your life without any happiness? Master Ivan accepts me, he's the only one who ever has. I would do anything he asked. Naruto answered, his voice wavering. As for happiness, monsters don't deserve happiness. With that said, Naruto turned sharply and left. Aren't you going to chase after him? Gray questioned besides Gildart's. Turning back to look at the kids he had saved, Gildart's chuckled as Erza looked over a squirming Natsu, scolding him. Looking down at Gray, he ruffled the boy's hair, making him grumble. Nah, he's not worth it. Glancing in the direction Naruto had taken off, Gildart's narrowed his eyes in thought. The magic that kid had used to kill the giant was dark. He had never even heard of such a magic before. He was going to have to tell Makarov about this new dark mage Ivan had under his control. Naruto limped through a forest, blood dripping down his body, a mixture of his and others, his clothes ragged and torn. When he got back to the Raven Tail Guild, he was surprised to find some of the members there waiting for him, and if he hadn't absorbed Eberhardt's thick skin magic, then their surprise attack surely would have killed him. Stopping, he leaned back against a tree, sliding down the trunk till he was sitting on the ground. Removing his hood, Naruto revealed his unruly spiky blonde hair and young features. His face was clean and untouched except for 3 distinct whisker marks on either side of his face. His blood-red eyes were filled with tears as he sat in the dark forest in complete silence. The master had betrayed him, said he had outlived his usefulness, and had the rest of the guild try and kill him. Of course the man himself hadn't been there at the time. If he had, then Naruto would have undoubtedly died. Now he was sitting in the forest trying to fight off the sleep that was trying to claim his tired body. In the end his body just couldn't take it anymore and Naruto passed into a fitful sleep. A blonde mage, named Naruto, you say? Makarov scratched his chin, sitting beside Gildart's at the bar. He had been beyond relieved when Gildart's had returned with Erza the other two, thankfully wounded pride's being the biggest problem. And his magic allowed him to absorb the other mage? That's right, master. Gildart's took a swig of beer. It seemed like something that Zarif would have been capable of doing. Another Zarif? Makarov wondered out loud. Are you going to inform the council? Gildart's asked. Makarov scoffed. No, there would be no point. Makarov paused, and from how you were talking about him, you made it seem like there was a possibility to save him. I saw. Gildart's thought about his words for a minute before continuing. I saw a flicker of doubt when he was talking about Ivan. Makarov polished off his beer. It's something to think about, especially if we ever run into him again. Turning his attention back to Gildart's, Makarov sighed. Now there is something that I've been meaning to talk to you about. Naruto's eyes shot open, his body covered in a cold sweat. The last thing he remembered was passing out in the forest. Trying to control his breathing, Naruto failed to notice that he was no longer in the forest. He was in a bed, in a home, and somebody was watching him. So, an old raspy voice called out. You're finally awake. Naruto was brought to his senses as he sat up, finally realizing where he was. What? Who are you? That's not important right now. An old man waved his hand, dismissing his question. However, if you must know, I am the one who brought you to my home and patched you up. His eyes seemed to sparkle in curiosity. Now who are you? And why did you have such severe wounds? Naruto paused. It's a long story. I've got plenty of time. The old man smiled at Naruto, which confused the boy. This wasn't an evil smile, or a fake one, this was a real honest smile. Naruto sighed, his past made him sad, but he was in the old man's debt. It started 4 years ago. Naruto ran through a forest in a panic, trying to escape from some creature that was chasing him. The last thing he remembered was trying to learn a jutsu from the Forbidden Scroll. Next thing he knew, he was in an unfamiliar forest. He had been confused at first, but then he figured that the jutsu had just transported him to another part of the forest or something. Trying the jutsu again, Naruto pictured in his mind the area that he had been in, only for nothing to happen. Desperately, Naruto tried the jutsu again and again, until he made a terrifying realization. He couldn't feel his chakra. Falling on his ass, Naruto began to hyperventilate. These trees weren't familiar, this area wasn't familiar. Where was he? Where could that jutsu had transported him to? And then he heard it. A terrifying, ear-shattering screech, and something deep inside of him told him to run. Without questioning, Naruto did just that. Tearing through the forest, he didn't pause for a second. Not once did he look behind him. He simply let instincts take over and tried to escape from whatever had made that horrible noise. Finally, he had come to a clearing. Not even thinking about the lack of covering, Naruto charged out, trying to race across to the other side, when something fell from the sky and landed in front of him, making dust and dirt fly up into the air. Taking a few steps back, Naruto felt his heart stop when a glowing pair of red eyes stared straight at him, through the dust. "Human," a voice growled out. "No one has dared cross my mountain in decades." The dust cleared, revealing a tall creature with fanged teeth and horns. It reminded Naruto of an ogre from the stories. "You'll make a good snack," it laughed as it began moving towards Naruto. Reacting on instincts, Naruto reached into his holster and threw several kunai at the hulking beast. The kunai simply bounced off the monster's skin like it was made of stone. "Shit," Naruto growled out as he tried to run away, only for the monster to grab hold his leg and fling him like he was a rag doll. Crashing into a nearby tree, Naruto felt some of his bones break as he fell to the ground. "Shit," Naruto grumbled out as the monster started to move closer to him. He had no idea where he was, and he was about to get killed and eaten by something out of a storybook. As the monster started to reach for him, Naruto closed his eyes and sadly accepted his fate. He would never get to be Hokage, he would never make any friends, he was just going to die here in the middle of the woods. Is this really your limit? Naruto's eyes shot open. He was no longer in the middle of a forest but sitting in ankle-deep water. Looking around, Naruto found a blonde-haired man looking down at him with sad eyes. He was standing in front of a gigantic gate that was held closed with a single piece of paper with the word "seal" written on it. "So we finally meet, Naruto." Naruto was shocked as he realized just who was standing in front of him, the fourth Hokage. "The seal is set so that if 8 tails are released, all appear in your consciousness." I was surprised though when I found that the only thing left of the Kyuubi was his chakra. "What?" Naruto questioned. "The Kyuubi? Seal? What are you talking about? Where are we? And how do you know my name?" Minato smiled sadly. "That's quite a few questions, but I'll try to answer them to the best I can. 12 years ago I sealed the Kyuubi inside of you to stop it from destroying the village." Minato winced at Naruto's shocked look. "I know what the history books say, but they're wrong." Pointing behind him at the cage, Minato continued. "He was sealed behind these bars for 12 years, but it seems like the jutsu you used drained him pretty badly. He isn't even able to maintain a solid form." Naruto stared at the man, his eyes full of fear. You sealed the Kyuubi inside of me?" Minato nodded grimly. "Then all these years, the reason I haven't had a single friend, the reason everyone in the village hated me, was because of you?" "Naruto," Minato was cut off. "Do you know how much I've had to suffer?" Naruto was standing now, tears streaming down his face, his body shaking in anger. "Why did you seal it inside me?" he shouted, raising an accusing finger. "Was I just some unlucky kid that you just so happened to find, or something?" Naruto, in an instant Minato was standing in front of Naruto, enveloping the boy in a hug. "I've caused you a lot of pain, I'm sorry." Minato stroked the crying boy's hair. "Some father I turned out to be." Naruto stopped his crying. "Father?" Breaking out of the mont's grasp, Naruto stared at him with wide eyes. You're my dad?" "Yeah," Minato smiled down sadly at the 12-year-old. 12 years ago I sealed half of the Kyuubi's chakra inside you, knowing that you would learn how to use it someday, because you were my son." Minato frowned, but there seems to have been a slight hiccup in my plan. "The jutsu you used was a technique that I was developing that would, in theory, allow me to jump to and from dimensions. It was an extension of my Hiraishin, but because of its complexity and risks I stopped working on it and placed it in the Forbidden Scroll." So I'm in another dimension?" Naruto asked with a confused look. His tears were all dried up now. Minato sighed. "I'm not sure, as I said it was incomplete, but I think it's our best guess at the time." Smiling down at Naruto, Minato put a kind hand on his head. "Now it's time to do something about what's going on outside your mind. I'm afraid at the moment there's only one option for you to take." Raising his hand, Minato directed Naruto's attention to the seal on the Kyuubi's gate. "Rip off the seal and absorb what's left of the Kyuubi." What? Naruto asked as he took a step back from Minato. Listen, you have to trust me on this. It's going to be hard, and the Kyuubi's power will corrupt you if you let it, but you're my son, I know you can do this. His body was slowly starting to fade away. I believe in you, son, I know you can do this. No, wait please, I still have so many questions. Minato smiled sadly, pulling his son into one last hug. I'm sorry Naruto, but I've already used up all my time. I love you, son. I love you too, Dad, Naruto whispered as Minato faded from existence. Taking a minute to gather himself, Naruto turned his attention to the seal. Walking up to it, he hesitantly placed his hand on it, before ripping the seal off completely. In a flash, the red substance that was Kyuubi's chakra charged him. Bringing his arms up to shield himself, Naruto closed his eyes in anticipation, only to open them when he didn't feel anything crashing into him. In amazement, he watched as the red substance was absorbed through his navel, completely disappearing. Whoa, that's it? Naruto thought aloud when he suddenly felt an incredible amount of pain force him to his knees. Shit, what the hell is this feeling? I hate this, a voice deep from inside Naruto spoke. I hated those damn people, I wanted to kill all of them. Naruto grabbed his chest, it felt like his heart had shattered into 1,000 pieces, he was torn in two. A part of him still wanted people to acknowledge him, to respect him, and the other part just hated everything and wanted the world to die. What the hell is this? You can't control me, you don't have what it takes. You're nothing more than a tiny fragment of my hatred. Must be the Kyuubi, go away. No one will ever accept you, the first voice spoke again. Don't you remember how everyone treated us? They wanted us to disappear, to die. Why would we want to be recognized by them? This hatred, Naruto cried out. It's too much. Do the world a favor, and just disappear forever. You belong here, another voice spoke out, grinding Naruto out of his daze as he looked up into the eyes of a red-haired woman, who was clutching her heart. Naruto, she smiled down at him. Who are you? Naruto shouted, as he tried to stand up, only to fall back down. Of course you wouldn't know, she smiled sadly, before grinning ear to ear. Why don't you guess? No, the dark voice spoke up, making the woman chuckle. Taking in her appearance, Naruto came to a conclusion. You're Kyuubi's true form, he shouted, pointing an accusing finger at her. What? She burst into laughter, that's like adorable. That expression on your face totally makes you look like your father. Your realization hit Naruto like a ton of bricks as he found the strength he was lacking just seconds ago. Standing up, he slowly made his way towards the woman. Yes, Kushina smiled down at Naruto. She didn't get to finish as Naruto tackled her into a hug, burying his face into her stomach and crying. With a small smile on her face, Kushina bent down to her son's height and enveloped him in a real hug, letting him bawl his eyes out on her shoulder. He spoke in a shaky breath. It's like I've always wanted to meet you, Datbeo. It's like, Kushina smiled happily, you really are my son. Breaking away from the hug, Naruto smiled up at her. There are so many things I want to talk to you about, Mom. Yeah, she smiled, we'll have a nice long talk, but let's leave the Kyuubi out of this. Placing her hand on Naruto's chest, Kushina closed her eyes in concentration before opening them. There, that better? Naruto nodded dumbly, the doubt and fear he had felt earlier had disappeared completely. Sitting down, Kushina motioned for Naruto to come closer, before pulling the boy into her lap, making him blush in embarrassment. Hey. Oh hush, Kushina huffed. I never got to hold you in my lap when you were a baby, so now I'm going to make up for lost time. After a long talk, and a tearful goodbye, Naruto found the strength that he needed to control the Kyuubi's power and conquer his true self. Once outside his mind, Naruto found it easy to beat the monster that was about to kill him earlier, and after following his instincts, he discovered the unique power that the Kyuubi's chakra had given him. Placing his hand on the monster's head, he began to absorb it, its knowledge, and its energy. He learned that he was in a place called Fury, where instead of ninjas there were mages, and instead of using chakra for jutsu they used magic energy to perform spells. He also learned that this monster was in fact a demon that had been created by a dark mage named Zarif. From the demon he had learned many spells, each one darker and more evil than the last. At the end of it all, he had absorbed one last thing that he hadn't been prepared for, the demon's emotions. Anger and hate overwhelmed Naruto's senses as he collapsed to the ground. This time there was no one to save him as he fell victim to the demon's hatred of humanity. For the next year he lived his life as the new demon of the mountain, killing and absorbing any who dare come near. Each kill brought him new knowledge, new spells, and conflicting emotions. It wasn't until he killed a traveling old man that he started to question his hate for humanity. The old man had been filled with sadness and sorrow so powerful that it had shaken the demon's powerful grip on Naruto's emotions, leaving him in a state of turmoil. Leaving the mountain, Naruto traveled, looking for somewhere a monster like him could belong, and that is when he found Raventail. Naruto and the old man sat in silence before the old man spoke up. "That was quite the story, Naruto-san." The old man sighed. "So you allowed this demon's hate to rule you until finally the sorrow your victims felt right before you killed them overwhelmed you. Is that about right?" Naruto didn't answer for a second before hanging his head in shame. "Yes. And now you've been betrayed by your guild. You have no purpose and are still overwhelmed by sorrow." The old man rubbed his bearded chin. "Well, as an ex-mage it is my sworn duty to report any known dark mages to the council." He paused. "But you seem more like a victim of circumstances than a dark mage, Naruto-san." They sat in silence for a moment before Naruto spoke up. "So what are you going to do with me then?" "Well," the old man cracked a grin, "I'm going to help you get better." Naruto walked through the town he was currently staying in. People happily waved to him and called his name. He had grown in the past 2 years. Standing at 6 feet he was toned but not muscular. His blonde hair was even longer and more unruly than it was before. Even the color of his eyes had changed back to their natural cerulean blue. 2 years ago he had been a sorrowful young boy, but the old man who had patched him up in the woods and nursed him back to health had changed that. He had taught Naruto how to be happy and how to love, along with other useful things. Yes, the past 2 years had been good to Naruto. He had even changed his style. Now he wore a brown jacket, with a hood covered in white fur, and an orange shirt underneath. The jacket had plenty of pockets for storing items, and on the back was a red circle with a swirl design on it, similar to that of a whirlpool. The right sleeve of the jacket was torn off, leaving his arm bare except for 2 small metal bracers he wore, one near his wrist, and the other up closer to his elbow. Also on his right hand was a black fingerless glove, with another small metal bracer attached to it. He now wore a pair of dark jeans, held up by a white belt. Another new addition was a odachi that he carried with him. The blade was sheathed in a black scabbard, and stood at a full 69 inches. The grip itself was almost 2 feet in length. Wrapped in black cloth, it supported a chain with some symbol attached to it at the pommel. Currently he was staying in a little nowhere town, the type of place where there is absolutely nothing to do, and nobody ever visits it. Of course, places such as this always had their fair share of problems, and Naruto had been happy to help. When he first got here there had been a small pack of monsters looking to overrun the place, but Naruto had sent them packing, gaining the love of the townspeople. They had put him up in a room, allowing him to stay there free of charge. With plenty of free time on his hands, Naruto had figured he would make himself useful. He had spent most of the morning talking with the citizens, figuring out the village's main problem. He had learned that there were a group of bandits camped out in the woods. So far they hadn't tried anything yet, but recently they had disappeared, which meant that they might have pulled back further into the forest in preparation for an attack. With no mage guilds or patrolling soldiers, this town was just asking to get hit, and hit hard. Naruto wasn't about to stand by and let that happen. After a thorough investigation, he had decided that the best course of action would be to get rid of the bandits before they tried to make their move. Walking out into the surrounding forest, the villagers wished Naruto the best of luck, before he disappeared from sight. Quietly walking through the trees, Naruto was reminded of his childhood. Konoha had always had a spring-like climate, meaning that the trees stayed green year-round. He missed his home sometimes, occasionally wondering how his classmates were, if they had become respected ninja, if they were still alive, along with various other things. Sometimes he found himself wondering just how different his life could have been. Would he have made friends? Could he have followed his father's footsteps and become Hokage? The snapping of a twig brought Naruto out of his musing. Quickly slinking into the shadows of a nearby tree, Naruto looked to the source of the sound, and found a tall hooded figure standing at the edge of a clearing. "No use hiding," the voice was gruff. "I can sense your magic." Naruto groaned inwardly. He hadn't been expecting to run into a mage. It was careless of him not to be suppressing his magic. "Alright, you got me, I'm coming out." Making his way toward the figure, Naruto noticed that whoever it was stood a few inches taller than him. Hopefully he could take whoever it was by surprise, but when he finally entered the clearing he was surprised by what he saw. A large group of bandits lay in a pile, unconscious, their camp destroyed. "Did you do that? What?" The man followed Naruto's gaze. "Oh, knock out those guys, yeah." Removing his hood he smiled down at Naruto. "Name's Gildarts Clive, Mage of Fairy Tale." "No way," Naruto muttered under his breath as his eyes widened. Taking a cautious step back, Naruto smiled nervously. "Wow, I was coming out here to get rid of these guys myself. Looks like you beat me to it though." "Haha," Gildarts laughed. "You must be pretty sure of your abilities if you came out here by yourself to take on the Fiend Bandit clan." "Those are the Fiends?" Naruto asked in mild surprise. The Fiends were an infamous clan of bandits who showed no mercy to their victims. Looking back at the pile of unconscious bodies, Naruto gulped silently. He was still confident that he would have taken them down, but he definitely would have been roughed up, at least a little. Taking another look at Gildarts, he realized that the man didn't even have a speck of dirt on him. "Well kid, why don't you run on back home?" Gildarts scratched his chin. "I'm already on a mission, but I'll make sure these guys are handed over to the royal army." "Right." Naruto started to leave. "I guess I'll just go let everyone know that the bandits won't be a problem anymore." Getting ready to leave, Naruto was stopped by Gildarts' voice. "Hey, I never got your name, kid." "Naruto," his mouth responded before his brain could stop it. "Damn it," Naruto mentally berated himself. "Why did I use my real name?" "Naruto?" Gildarts said the name to himself, almost as if he was trying to remember something. "Have we met before? You seem familiar." "No," Naruto replied a little too quickly. "I've never left the village before, lived here all my life." Gildarts approached the teen. Something was familiar about this kid. Blonde hair, whisker marks. Name was Naruto. He just couldn't think of where he had met this kid, but he knew he had at some point. Examining the fidgeting kid, Gildarts began to inspect the way his magic felt. It was warm and bubbly. Happy would be a good word for it, but on closer inspection he could feel a more sinister power lurking just beneath the surface. And suddenly it all came rushing back to him. "You, damn," Naruto muttered as he snapped his fingers, causing a flash of bright light to consume the area. It was time for a hasty retreat. "Erza," Gildarts walked beside the young redhead on their way back to Magnolia Town. Natsu and Gray walked behind them, arguing about something. "What can you tell me about that blonde mage?" "Nothing really," he didn't speak. She seemed to think about it for a moment. "No wait," the big one referred to him as Naruto. "Naruto?" Gildarts questioned. He was going to have to keep an eye out for this Naruto. As Naruto tried to escape, he felt something latch onto his arm, preventing him from fleeing. Finally, after 2 years, the light died down, showing that Gildarts held his eyes firmly shut, but had somehow managed to grab hold of Naruto. "After 2 years I finally found you, Naruto of Raventail." Naruto struggled to free himself from Gildarts' grip. "I haven't been a part of Raventail in 2 years." This man was like an iron clamp, he just wouldn't let go. "I'm no longer a dark mage. I just want to live my life in peace." Releasing Naruto from his grip, Gildarts glared intently down at the teen. "Prove it then." "What?" Naruto asked, surprised. "Fight me, and prove to me that you're no longer a dark mage through your fist." Gildarts' glare was intense. There was no way Naruto could stack up to this man. "Me fight you? I'm not crazy." Naruto turned his back on the man, ready to run. Then run away, and forever be branded a dark mage. Naruto froze at Gildarts' words. His fist clenching, he turned around with fire in his eyes. "Fine, I'll prove to you that I've changed." Removing his jacket, Naruto wrapped up his odachi in it before setting both items to the side. "I won't hold back," he told the older man as he adopted a fighting stance. "Good," Gildarts smirked. He stood with his arms held at his side. "He's underestimating me," Naruto thought. "Kamaho. Senko," he shouted as he disappeared in a flash. Gildarts' eyes widened in surprise when felt a presence behind him. Turning around, he brought up his arm to block a kick to his head. Before he could do more though, Naruto had disappeared again. "What speed?" Gildarts thought. "All I can make out is a flash of yellow." Naruto inspected his opponent from a distance. He had good reflexes, that was for sure. Not everyone could keep up with his speed. He could still go a little faster though, Naruto thought with a smirk as he disappeared in a flash of yellow. Gildarts didn't have any time to respond when a kick connected with his temple. Standing there, Gildarts was surprised to find that the kick had been extremely weak. I hope that kick wasn't at full strength. He moved to grab Naruto's leg only for the teen to disappear in another flash of yellow. Reappearing a few feet away from Gildarts, Naruto growled. Senko was a type of light magic that traded physical strength for speed. It worked great when facing a large number of weak opponents, but it looked like this tactic wouldn't work against Gildarts. Hey, Naruto smirked, looks like I'm going to have to try something different. Canceling the spell, Naruto charged Gildarts head-on. His physical strength wasn't anything to laugh at, he could crush boulders with a single punch. Add that with a little speed-inducing light magic and Naruto had one hell of a right hook. Surprised by Naruto's reckless charge, Gildarts almost didn't catch the punch the blonde threw at him. His speed had dropped considerably, but still Gildarts had never seen such a fast punch before. It looked like Naruto's arm had turned into a yellow light before reappearing ready to knock Gildarts out. And the strength that he was packing now was nothing to laugh at either. Gildarts was going to have to take this a little bit more seriously. Holding tightly onto Naruto's fist, Gildarts dipped into his magical power, and released it in one strong burst. Naruto had been caught off guard by the following explosion of magical energy, and was sent flying backwards, crashing through a tree before coming to a stop. So that's Kurashu, Naruto thought as he got back on his feet. Blood was leaking from the corner of his mouth. Such strength, his knees were shaking. There was no way he could beat someone of Gildarts' caliber with his current strength. There's always that, Naruto thought darkly. No, he shook his head violently. I need to prove to him that I'm not a dark mage. Calming himself, Naruto stared Gildarts down one more time. He shouted as he charged the older man. Upon reaching the older man, Naruto disappeared in a yellow flash. Appearing behind him, he cocked his fist back only for Gildarts to turn around, lashing out with his leg. Avoiding the attack by disappearing in a yellow flash, Naruto appeared to his side this time, trying to connect to Gildarts' midsection with a kick. But the veteran mage's reflexes stayed true, and the kick was blocked by an open palm. Grabbing hold of the blonde's leg, Gildarts flung the blonde through the air, only for him to disappear in yet another yellow flash. That's getting annoying, Gildarts thought to himself. Appearing a few feet away, Naruto stood facing the older mage, panting. He was using Senko to increase his speed, but right before the attack he would cancel the spell, then reactivating it again to escape. This method was risky. Senko was meant to be a long-term spell, costly to activate, but once active it hardly drained any magic. By constantly activating it and deactivating it, Naruto was quickly wasting his energy. Didn't think it would be that draining, Naruto thought to himself as he realized just how depleted his reserves were. I was really hoping to catch him off guard with those attacks, but his reaction time is so fast it's just inhuman. I may have no choice but to use that. Naruto growled at the thought. No, I can do this. Pointing the middle and index fingers of both hands at Gildarts like a gun, Naruto's fingertips were enveloped by a magical seal. Kamaho. Teppo. Gildarts' eyes widened in surprise as a volley of yellow bullets flew towards him from Naruto's fingertips. Raising his cloak up in front of him to protect him from the attack, Gildarts felt the attack hit, surprised by its strength. When it finally died down, he dropped his cloak, finding that Naruto had disappeared, not to the right or the left. He's not behind either, that just leaves. Gildarts looked upwards to find that Naruto had jumped up to try and surprise him with an attack from above. Upon impact, Gildarts used Kurashu on the ground, using it as a cushion. Ha! Naruto shouted as he launched into a volley of punches, his fist glowing with a yellow light. Gildarts smirked as he flawlessly countered Naruto's every move. The blonde's attacks had slowed considerably. The kid was doing a lot better than he had expected, a hell of a lot better actually. So far he had kept the darker side of his magic perfectly under control. Gildarts wondered just how far the teen would have to be pushed before he unleashed it. So Gildarts is going to be gone for the next 100 years? Natsu asked with a frown on his face. Unless he finishes his mission early, Erza answered him. Natsu placed his chin on the table, pouting. I wanted to fight him though, he whined. Images of the day Gildarts had saved him flashed through his mind. Gildarts had been so calm and cool about beating a guy that Natsu could barely land a hit on. Natsu, Erza scolded. It would be pointless to fight Gildarts as you are, you're just not strong enough. The rose-haired boy growled, then I'll get strong enough. And when Gildarts comes back after his mission I'll challenge him to a fight and beat him. He was now standing, pointing an accusing finger at Erza. Erza sighed in frustration. Some of the older guild members were looking in their direction and smiling at Natsu's enthusiasm. She just didn't know where the boy got his energy from. Fine. She smirked, but you'll have to beat me first. Ha, Natsu grinned confidently. First I'll beat you, then I'll go after Luxus. Said Blonde looked up from where he was, shaking his head with disappointment. Then I'll go find that Naruto and make him apologize. Natsu grinned madly, then finally I'll go after Gildarts. Erza smiled at the boy while shaking her head. He still had a ways to go, but she didn't doubt him for a moment. Naruto panted heavily, watching Gildarts as the man stood there calmly. The veteran hadn't even moved from his starting position yet. Damn it, Naruto thought angrily, what was this guy made of? He had pulled out all the stops, gone above his limit, and still he couldn't even touch Gildarts. Falling to his knees, Naruto punched the earth in a fit of rage. It's no good, I don't have a choice. Gildarts raised his eyebrow as he felt the darker side of Naruto's magic increase. Frowning, he shook his head, so this was the blonde's limit. He had put up a good fight, but in the end he just didn't have it in him, it looked like. Gildarts felt slightly disappointed as the dark magic spiked again. Naruto was now standing, staring Gildarts down. His eyes had changed back to their murderous red color. Feeling his body repairing itself with the dark magical energy, he got ready to attack when something in the corner of his vision caught his eye. It was the Odachi he carried with him at all times. Watching in silence, Gildarts was confused by what was happening. The dark energy had completely taken the lighter magic over now, but it was fluxing, almost like the two energies were fighting for control. Perhaps Naruto was fighting the dark magic off, Gildarts wondered. The blonde stood off in his own world, fixated on the Odachi. It was then that he remembered the words of his teacher. Naruto lay on the ground panting. Pressed against his throat was the tip of the very same blade he carried. His eyes were blood red, but they quickly changed back to blue. On the other end of the blade stood the old man, Naruto's teacher. He withdrew his sword from Naruto's throat. Still can't control it, I see. That's a shame, he shook his head as he sheathed the blade. If you could learn to control that power, then a whole new branch of powers would be open to you, I know it. Helping Naruto to his feet, the old man studied him. Naruto, you must never forget that spells weren't the only thing you absorbed from Zerif's demon. You absorbed his magic, his very essence, and in a way it changed you. The demon's magic is like nothing I've ever felt before, and if you ever learn to control it, then I have no doubt that you'll become a respected mage. The old man sighed, but until you learn to control it, you must promise me to never try and use its spells. Every minute you're in that form without control is a minute you risk falling back into the demon's bloodlust again. Naruto sighed. Alright sensei, I'll remember, I promise. Naruto clenched his fist with resolve. I remember sensei. The demon's magic slowly left Naruto's system, his eyes changing back to their normal blue color. Turning to Gildarts, he smiled, determination burning in his eyes. I'll beat you with my own strength, Datbeo. Gildarts smirked. I believe you. Accepting a fighting stance, Gildarts continued to smile. Now show me what kind of mage you've become, Naruto. Bringing up his right hand, it glowed with magical energy and he smiled happily. I have enough left for one last attack. His eyes hardened and his voice became serious. So I'll put everything I have into this one last attack and prove to you that I've changed. At least 100 miniature yellow seals appeared all around the field. Kamaho. Kitsune Bakuden. Naruto laid on his back looking up at the sky. The last of his magic had been put into one final attack. He didn't even have enough energy left to stand. He sighed deeply. The fluffy white clouds were floating lazily across a blue sky. It was a relaxing sight. Standing over him was a grinning Gildarts, a small cut across his forehead. Other than torn clothes, that was the greatest amount of damage Naruto had caused to the man. He was standing over Naruto looking down at him with a stupid grin on his face. That was one hell of an attack, kid. First time someone has pushed me that far in a long time. Naruto snorted at that. Gildarts was a monster on a whole other level. He had thought himself to be strong, but the fight had really opened his eyes. You've convinced me. Gildarts' smile died down a little bit. I think you're going to make a great mage someday. He laughed, "If you ever find yourself looking for a home, then you should head over to Fairy Tail." Gildarts waved his arm around indicating the battlefield. Craters were everywhere. "You'll fit right in with our little group of misfits." "I'll think about it," Naruto mumbled. In truth, he wasn't ready to stop wandering. "Well, I'll see you later, kid." Gildarts turned to leave, throwing Naruto a wave over his shoulder. "Try not to lose yourself out there, alright?" After resting for a while, Naruto had went back to the village, informing them that their bandit problem was over. Regretfully, he told them that he couldn't spend any more time in the village, despite their pleas for him to stay and rest. A month had passed since then. Naruto was currently sitting aboard a train, riding it to wherever he felt like going. While he could have just used Senko to travel, he was in no rush to go anywhere. Of course, he wasn't riding in comfort or anything. Without any real money he had stowed away in one of the storage cars. He figured he would get off when the train made its first stop. Naruto had been mulling over what Gildarts had said to him about joining Fairy Tail. After considering it, he had decided that he just wasn't ready to join another guild. He felt a primal urge to fix his past mistakes. Naruto felt that he just wouldn't be able to do that from inside a guild. So for now he would travel and master his demon. He would stop and help anyone that asked for help. He would never turn a blind eye or deaf ear to anyone who asked for his assistance. After all, he tightly gripped the sword resting in his lap. He felt like his teacher would approve of this plan. An hour later, the train had come to a stop, allowing Naruto to disembark without being noticed. Finally, he thought as he stretched his limbs, sore from hiding in a cramped space for so long. Walking around the train station, Naruto found himself at the exit and let a low whistle out at what he saw. The town was apparently getting ready for some kind of festival. The citizens were out and about setting up booths and hanging banners. Taking his first few steps, Naruto kept looking around, taking in his surroundings. Some people were even dressed up in their kimono, ready for tonight's festivities. Hearing some giggling, Naruto looked to the source of the noise, finding a small group of girls talking amongst each other, occasionally glancing in his direction. Blushing, Naruto realized that they were talking about him. Quickly turning away from the group, he continued walking. For now he didn't have any real plans, so perhaps he would stay for the festivities. Absorbed in his thoughts, Naruto was oblivious of his surroundings when someone ran into him, causing whoever it was to fall on their rear end. "Ow!" A young feminine voice spoke up from the ground. She had black hair that reached her mid-back, tied into a ponytail with two long bangs running down the side of her head, that reached her chest. She was dressed in a purple shirt that showed off her stomach and a pair of tight-fitting jeans, along with a small black backpack. There was a sort of beauty about her porcelain-like skin that made Naruto blush slightly as he helped her to her feet. "Sorry about that," he offered an apology to the girl who stood there looking at him. "Yeah, well," she looked up at his eyes, breaking contact with his stare quickly, a small blush on her features. "I wasn't looking where I was going, I was in a rush." They both heard the sound of the train departing, making the girl sigh. "Great," she muttered. Realization dawned on Naruto. "Oh, you were trying to catch the train, sorry about that." She waved him forget about it. She offered him her hand. "I'm Ultier." Naruto took her hand, shaking it. "Naruto." He smiled down at her, a smile that she returned. "So Naruto-san, since you made me miss my train, how about treating me to lunch?" Ultier asked with a slight pout. Sure." Naruto chuckled on the outside, but on the inside he groaned. He didn't have any cash. Guess there was only one option. "I'm new in town, so you can pick some place." She smiled at that, telling him to follow her. Nodding his head, Naruto did just that. On the way to the restaurant, Ultier had begun to ask him questions, which he responded to. Most of them were lies, but she didn't need to know that. Ultier continued to babble on, asking the blonde about his life, when out of nowhere he tripped on his own 2 feet, crashing into a portly man. Giggling, she smiled as Naruto helped the man to his feet, offering an apology. The man had replied with some indecent words, but they didn't seem to faze the blonde. "You're quite the clumsy one, aren't you, Naruto-san?" "Ha." Naruto chuckled, scratching the back of his head. "Been this way for as long as I can remember, I'm afraid." He quickly stashed the coin purse he had swiped from the man in his pocket. At least growing up poor proved good for something. He had learned how to successfully pickpocket at a young age. He was glad to see that he still had the skill. The purse felt heavy, hopefully enough to pay for their meal. Eventually Ultier led him into a decent-sized restaurant where they took their seat, waiting for their order to be taken. It was quiet for a few moments when Ultir finally spoke up. So are you a soldier or something? She was, of course, pointing to Naruto's sword that was propped up against the both. He shook his head. No, I'm a mage, though I do know how to fight with a sword. It's more of a memento from my teacher. He smiled. I hardly ever use it in a fight. Ultir's eyes seemed to sparkle. You're a mage? What kind of magic do you use? Naruto chuckled. I mostly use the magic that my teacher taught me, Kamaho, light magic. But I know a bunch of other spells as well. He smiled at the way Ultir seemed to stare dumbly at him. What about you? Are you a mage? She sighed slightly. No, though I always wanted to be one. A waitress interrupted the conversation, taking their orders with a smile. The rest of the meal was filled with Ultir's questions of his adventures and if he had ever fought another mage. 3 hours later they were leaving the restaurant, neither of them having realized where the time went. Looking up into the sky, Naruto realized that the sun was starting to set and the festivities were starting. If you don't have anything else to do, would you like to go to the festival with me? Ultir smiled, grabbing onto Naruto's arm. Lead the way. Blushing, the blonde smiled and headed toward the festival, with Ultir's arm wrapped around his. In truth, he hadn't had so much fun in a long time. Back in Konoha people had shunned him, in Raven Tail he shunned everyone, but now he had a chance to start over and really make some friends like his mom had wanted him to. Once they arrived, Ultir began to drag him all over the festival. Their first stop had been a small goldfish scoping stand which Naruto had proved to be pretty good at, whining a small stuffed bear. He had given it to Ultir with a smile. Taking the bear, Ultir blushed, as she hugged it slightly to her chest. Flatterer, she muttered with a small smile. Grinning, Naruto took her hand, allowing her to lead him to something else. They continued to stop at game vendors, sometimes just watching other people play and other times they would have a go at it. They were both having a lot of fun. Naruto had even dropped his guard, not noticing the 3 men that had been following them since the goldfish stand. Eventually they stopped at a puppet show. Both tired from walking, they sat in the back and watched. It was a comedic version of Zeref's final battle and sealing. It was of course meant for children, most of which were cheering and clapping at the show. Several adults stood in the back talking amongst each other. Ultir seemed to be fascinated by the show, making Naruto chuckle slightly. Hey, I think I'll go grab something to eat. Do you want anything? Ultir smiled. Sure, I'll just take whatever you get. Nodding, Naruto left to find a food vendor, leaving Ultir by herself. She sat there for a minute or two watching the show when someone approached her from the side. Hello there, beautiful. The man was obviously drunk, as were his 2 friends that flanked him. Reaching down, he roughly pulled her to her feet. Ultir started to scream when a blade pressed itself into her side. How about we take this someplace more private? When Naruto got back, Ultir was nowhere to be found. The bear he had won for her lay helplessly on the ground, making him panic slightly. He asked around, trying to find someone who knew something. Almost everyone though said they hadn't seen the girl. Finally Naruto found a someone, though he had been less than pleased to the man's response. What's it worth to ya? The man was missing his front teeth, along with most of his hair. His clothes were no better than Rage's, and his breath smelled of raw eggs. Naruto glared at the man. Either you tell me what you know or I beat it out of you. His eyes flashed dangerously, making the man sweat bullets. I saw a group of men drag her into the alley over there. He shouted, before covering his head in fear of being hit. Looking out from behind his hands, the man gasped when Naruto disappeared in a flash of yellow light. We've been waiting all night for that boyfriend of yours to leave you alone. The leader of the men spoke as he pinned Ultir up against the alley wall, ripping of her shirt. Oh, someone was feeling naughty today, the man commented at Ultir's lack of bra. Ultir didn't say anything, she merely sat there and cried, the man's rusty knife pressed against her throat. She closed her eyes, praying for someone to save her, but her hope was quickly dying when the man's grimy hand gave her chest a firm squeeze. Oh, he chuckled, nice and firm. I wonder how they taste. The men behind him busted out laughing, watching as their leader's mouth got closer to Ultir's chest. Before he could continue though, he was interrupted by a flash of yellow, followed by a fist that dislocated his jaw and sent him flying through the air. The other 2 didn't have a chance to respond before they were quickly taken down in a similar fashion. Standing over the unconscious men, Naruto felt his anger spike. How could anyone stoop so low? Turning his attention to Ultir, his eyes softened. She had fallen to the ground in a fetal position, eyes shut tight. Walking over to her, he reached out, gently grabbing her shoulder, making the girl flinch. "Altair, it's alright. It's me, Naruto. Don't worry, those guys won't be bothering you anymore." "Naruto?" she asked as she opened her eyes, tears still leaked from them. Realizing that she was safe, she moved and wrapped Naruto up in a hug, crying silently into his chest. You saved me," she cried happily. "Of course I did." Naruto smiled softly as he released himself from the girl's grip. Pulling off his jacket, he wrapped her up in it. "You're my friend, I would never let anything bad happen to you." He helped her to her feet, giving her hand a comforting squeeze. "Do you have someplace to stay?" "No," Altair shook her head, "but I could probably get my room at the hotel back." Naruto nodded. "Okay, I'll walk you there." Naruto and Altair stood outside her door, saying their goodbyes. As Naruto turned to leave, Altair grabbed his hand. "Please don't leave, I'm scared." She paused. "Stay with me, for tonight." "Altair," Naruto muttered quietly. "Please," she spoke, "I can still feel his hands touching me." She told him silently. Grabbing his hand, Altair guided it to her chest. Maybe if someone else were to touch them." She paused, looking up into Naruto's eyes. "I wouldn't be able to feel his touch anymore." Naruto didn't know what to say. He was caught completely off guard. It didn't make things any better when Altair leaned in close and started to kiss him. He just stood there at first, but then he started to kiss her back. Part of him told him to stop because it was wrong to take advantage of the situation, but that part of him was completely drowned out by his hormones. Breaking the kiss, Altair opened the door, fumbling with the key for a moment before stepping inside. Naruto followed her inside the room, embracing her as they continued their kissing, the door closing behind them. It was around 4 in the morning, Altair estimated, as she began to pick up her discarded clothing. Getting dressed, she looked down at the blonde who was still sleeping soundly. Altair chuckled to herself. He was definitely a looker. When he got a little older, she was sure he would leave a trail of broken hearts wherever he went. Finally, she pulled out her ripped-up shirt from last night. She had grabbed it before the blonde had led her away from the alley last night. Holding it in her hands, the shirt quickly mended itself, leaving it exactly how it was the night before. Pulling it over her head, she sighed. Master Hades had been tracking the boy for some time now, ever since his days as the demon of the mountain. Hades had become interested in the boy, hoping to recruit him as a powerful addition to Grimoire Heart, but it seemed that he had become soft over the years. Altair had been tasked with getting to know Naruto, and find out if he was Grimoire material, but sadly he wasn't. She looked down at him. He was sure to become a force to reckon with someday, maybe even try to stop their plan to wake Zeref. Part of her thought that she should just kill him now, but another part of her wanted to see just how powerful he would become. Eventually she decided that it would be fun to see just how strong he would become, and left the bedroom, quietly closing the door behind her. Walking through the small living room, her eyes spotted the teddy bear Naruto had won for her last night. He must have picked it up after she had dropped it at the festival, and forgotten to return it to her last night. Staring at the bear, Altair contemplated on taking it, a small blush rising to her cheeks. What was she thinking? There was only room for one man in her heart. Leaving, Altair turned and looked at the bear. Pausing for a moment, she quickly rushed over to it and grabbed it, stuffing it into her backpack. Trying to ignore the blush that had, once again, risen to her cheeks, she hastily made her way to the door, trying to think up an excuse for taking the stuffed animal. Naruto sighed as he walked out of the town he had stayed in last night. This morning he had woken up to an empty hotel room. It had been disappointing to say the least to find that Altair had snuck off sometime during the night, but a part of him had been expecting it. Still, it did nothing to dull the pain of his aching heart. Sighing again, Naruto began to make his way towards a forest that existed a few miles away from the town. It was time to get serious about training. Putting Altair behind him for now, he began to think about just how he was going to try and tame the darker magic inside of him. The safest way to go about it, and the slowest, would to be to let the dark magic slowly trickle into his system, get used to it, and then repeat the process. The fastest way would be to let the magic flood his system and try to tame it all at once. This, however, wasn't really an option because he didn't have anyone around to stop him if he went berserk. He had tried it a few times. Each time the old man was there to stop him when he went berserk. Now he was on his own though, and he was still afraid that the dark magic would still be too much for him to handle. He sighed again. He was going to have to use the first option, and get used to the magic. It would take him a few months, but he needed to do this. He had been putting it off for too long. It was time to master his inner demon. Reaching the forest, he began to walk through the trees, trying to find a clearing he could set up a camp and begin the process of taming the demonic energy inside of him. An hour later, Naruto had found the clearing he had been hoping for. He had dug a pit for fire, gathered wood, found a stream for water, and set up a small tent he had bought this morning, with what was left of the money he had taken from the portly man yesterday. With everything set up, Naruto sighed to himself, this is it, time to get serious. Naruto lay on the ground panting heavily. His teacher was currently trying to teach him his special brand of Kamaho, light magic. It had been a few months since he had been rescued and they had been practicing almost every day, but so far he hadn't been able to use the magic. Every attempt had blown up in his face. Damn it, he muttered. The old man scratched his chin as he watched Naruto lay on the ground. I think I understand the problem here. I believe that when you absorbed the demon, your magic separated into two separate pools of energy. The first pool is yours. It consists of the same basic magical energy that every human possesses. The second pool, however, holds the demon's magical energy, something that no human has ever been able to successfully use. My theory for why you can't use my magic is because you're unconsciously trying to draw your magic from both pools of energy. In the end, the two different energies clash and you're not able to perform either human or demon magic. But Naruto brought his hand up to his face, staring at it through red eyes. I'm still able to use my absorption magic. Why is that? I have a theory for that too. I believe that when the Kyuubi merged with you, some of its demonic energy broke away and mixed with some of your magical energy, creating a third pool of magic. Your absorption ability is like nothing I have ever seen or heard about before. Born from a demon's need to survive and human ingenuity, for it to work it needs the mixture of yours and the Kyuubi's energy. He sighed. Of course this is all wild speculation, there's no way to be sure. No, Naruto shook his head. I think I feel the three different energies. Bringing up his palm, Naruto began to draw out his magical energy, focusing on the lighter of the three. Slowly it began to make its way through his body, and into his right hand. Naruto watched, amazed as a small golden ball of light emerged from his hand. Well done. The old man clapped from behind him. Now you're getting the hang of it. Naruto smiled, actually smiled. It had been so long since he had done that, not since the night he killed the mountain demon. The smile died as he slowly began to remember the people he had killed over the years. Mentally he could feel the demonic energy inside of him lash out and mix with his normal energy. Soon after that the ball of light in his hand exploded, throwing him back. A month had passed since Naruto had started his training, each day filled with mastering his demonic energy, practicing his spells, and a little bit of exercising. During his free time he would explore the forest, or hunt for food, and occasionally venturing into town to steal a newspaper. Each day he was slowly getting stronger, but mastering the demonic energy was a slow process. So far he couldn't use more than a fourth of it without risking his sanity, and things seemed to only get more difficult from there. The more demonic energy he used, the harder it got to control, but for now he was going to have to just grit his teeth and push through. Currently he was relaxing in the clearing, wondering just how he was going to solve his money problem. Joining a guild would be easiest, he thought out loud to himself, but there are other ways. Lately he had been thinking about taking a few bounties. Downside to that is that he would have to apply for a bounty hunter license, and it was a good way to make enemies. Upside was that bounty hunting was a good way to get a reputation, which made joining a guild easier. Choices. XXX. What was that? Naruto asked, nearly falling out of his chair. The old man sitting across from him simply smiled. You heard me, Naruto, it's time for you to move on and see the world, and it's time to show the world the new you. But I haven't even finished my training yet. Naruto shouted frantically, not wanting to give up on this carefree life he had grown used to. The old man chuckled. You have mastered the basics, as for more complicated spells you will have to invent them yourself, just as I had to. But perhaps I could provide you with a few parting gifts. Naruto began to protest, but the old man cut him off. The decision has been made, Naruto, now go get some rest, tomorrow will be a long day. Sighing, the blonde stood up from his chair and headed to his room. Good night, master. The old man chuckled. Good night, my student. The next day Naruto stood outside the old man's home. A traveling pack on his back. He was waiting for the old man to come out and wish him goodbye. Sure enough, the door opened, revealing the old man holding his long black katana. "Naruto, before you leave I have two gifts for you." He held out the blade to the surprised blonde. "The first is my blade, given to me by my master after I had finished my training. It is the same blade that his master presented to him, and so on and so forth." With shaking hands, Naruto took the blade gently from the old man's hands. "Thank you, master, I don't know what to say." The old man nodded. "I felt the same way, my boy. My second gift is much more personal though." Walking closer to Naruto, the old man held out his hand. "My second gift is one of knowledge." It took a few seconds before Naruto realized what his master was giving him. "What? No, master, how could you ask me to do that?" The old man chuckled. "Relax, my boy, I'm not asking you to kill me, but I want you to absorb my knowledge. Take some of my spells, and what I know of Kenjutsu." "But master, what if I absorb too much?" Naruto held out his shaking hand, staring at his open palm. "I could kill you." The old man simply shook his head. "I trust you, Naruto, and I know you can do this." Naruto released a shaky breath. "Alright, you've never led me wrong before." Grasping his master's hand, Naruto sighed. "Yugo Suru Banmotsu Maho, assimilate all creation magic." Naruto stared up into the starry night sky, thinking about past events. Tomorrow is the beginning of a new chapter, he thought out loud to himself, having gone into town earlier that day to purchase a bounty hunter license. He would be given easy bounties or missions to start off with, but once he built up some trust with the law enforcement, he would be allowed to take on more difficult bounties. "I wonder," Naruto began, closing his eyes, drifting off into sleep. "I wonder if master would be proud of me." Naruto sighed as he walked out of a local law enforcement building, his pouch heavy with jewels once more. Over the past 5 months he had made quite the name for himself as a famous bounty hunter who used a brand of never-seen-before lost magic. His training with the demonic magic had slowly began to improve. Now he was capable of using some of the demon's weaker spells along with a powerful transformation that increased his strength tenfold. In an attempt to gain more control over the darker magic, he had started using it in place of his light magic. For the last 5 months he had done nothing but grow in looks and strength, as well as age, being 18 now. He now stood a few inches taller with hair that reached his shoulders that he tied back into a ponytail. Reaching into the pocket of his new black jacket with orange lining, he pulled out a wanted poster. "Members of the Grimoire Heart Guild cited. The capture of any member will result in a reward." Naruto read the poster out loud again. "Report to Captain Lahar stationed outside Ochi." Grimoire Heart was a familiar name to him. He remembered their master, Hades, asking Ivan to join their alliance a few years ago. They were known as one of the corners for the Balam alliance, but they were famous for being able to wipe out entire cities in just a day. Naruto snorted at that. They were famous for attacking cities without guilds, and killing civilians. The city that he was supposed to report to, Ochi, was also the last place Grimoire Heart had attacked and was couple hours from the town he was in now. Rolling up the poster and sticking it back in his jacket, Naruto swung his sword over his shoulder and started walking towards his destination. His mind wandering back to his days in Raven Tail, remembering all too well what had happened the day Hades and his son had come to ask Ivan to join their alliance. Naruto stood in front of Raven Tail's entrance watching as two figures, one tall the other shorter, approached the guild. Once closer, Naruto could see that the taller figure was an older man with long gray hair, a beard, and a patch over his right eye. He was wearing what looked like a crown on his head, and a black cape giving him a regal look. Beside him walked a young man with long spiky blonde hair that fell around his shoulders. He wore a psychotic smile on his face, and his red eyes added to the psychopathic look. Turning to fetch Ivan, Naruto felt a heavy hand land on his head. "It looks like we have visitors, eh, Naru-chan?" It was Ivan, of course. "Shall we go greet them?" "Of course, master," Naruto nodded as they headed to intercept the two strangers. Once in speaking distance, the old man held up his hand. "Ho there, I am Hades, master of Grimoire Heart, and representative of the Balam Alliance." He indicated towards the teen beside him. "This is Zankro, one of my children, and a member of Grimoire Heart." "Oh?" Ivan smirked. "Old Master Purito, what are you doing here? Come to offer me a part in your silly alliance?" Hades smirked back at Ivan. "You were always a clever child, Ivan. Ivan chuckled. My, what would father think if he discovered that his beloved master had started the infamous Grimoire Heart? Hades' smirk vanished from his face and was replaced with a scowl. I'm not here to discuss such matters, Ivan. I've come to offer a part in the Balam alliance. The defiant smirk on Ivan's face widened. I declined Purhito Gigi. I have no interest in the Balam alliance or whatever it is. Hades' eyes narrowed. You should reconsider, Ivan. No dark guild can survive on its own for long. With Raventail's name growing, it won't be long before the council turns its eyes on you, and when they do you'll need the power of the Balam alliance to survive. Ivan chuckled. I decline. Hades nodded. Very well then, Zancro, let's go. Turning, he felt that Zancro hadn't moved. Zancro? Father, we came all this way to get this guy to join the alliance and you're giving up just like that? Wild black flames leaked from Zancro, making Hades sigh. He should have known better than to bring the boy on a diplomatic mission. Zancro now is not the... Is that perhaps one of the rumored 7 kin of purgatory? Ivan interrupted Hades, staring at Zancro and his black flames intently. After a minute's pause, Ivan spoke up again. How about a deal, Hades? My Naru-chan versus your Crow-chan. If Crow-chan wins, I'll join your alliance. Hades' eyebrow twitched upwards. And if this Naru-chan wins, what do you get? Ivan had a mischievous glint in his eyes as a smile spread across his face. I just simply wish to see what type of dangerous magic you've given to those kids of yours. Hades narrowed his eye, inspecting Ivan closely before nodding. Agreed. Hell yeah. Zancro shouted as he pumped his fist into the air. I'm gonna burn you good, yeah? Ivan nodded to Naruto, who approached Zancro. Begin. He called when both looked ready. Zancro didn't waste any time, launching a fireball at Naruto before Ivan had even finished speaking. Naruto simply sidestepped the black ball of fire, allowing it to pass by him. Seeing that he had missed angered Zancro as he launched a volley of black fireballs, each one missing as Naruto proved to be faster than Zancro's fire. Damn it! Zancro shouted as he gathered up magic. Stand still and burn. Engine no dogo. Fire gods bellow, breathing out a giant black fireball. Zancro laughed as from his position it seemed to have consumed Naruto. Once the fire died down, the blonde psychopath laughed madly. I burnt you to ashes. I burnt you. Yuhei. His laughing was interrupted when a hand emerged from the ground, attempting to grab him. Fuck, he shouted, jumping away from the hand. Slowly the rest of Naruto pulled itself out of the ground, looking completely unharmed. Damn it, Zancro grumbled. I thought I burnt him with that last attack. Off to the sides, Hades and Ivan watched the fight in silence. Naruto had closed the distance between him and Zancro and was engaging the God Slayer in hand-to-hand combat, forcing Zancro to dodge his powerful blows. Crow-chan is good, but he's far too hot-headed to fight my Naru-chan, Ivan told him, a victorious smile plastered on his face as he watched the fight. Just who is this Naru-chan? Hades asked Ivan as Naruto finally grabbed hold of Zancro by the head, smashing him into the ground, forming a crater. Naru-chan? Ivan asked as he turned to face Hades, a disturbing smile plastered on his face. Did I forget to mention that? Silly me, he's the demon of the mountains. Hades was fast to react, moving to where Naruto and Zancro were, kicking Naruto away from his son. Leaning down, he checked the boy's pulse to make sure he was still alive. He almost breathed a sigh of relief when he felt the steady pulse. Off to the side, Naruto pulled himself up, holding his broken ribs tenderly as Ivan approached him. Well? Ivan asked expectantly. Bowing, Naruto held out his hand, a small black flame dancing on his palm. Perfect, Ivan told him as he rested a hand on Naruto's head. Turning to Hades, he addressed the man and his pupil. I think it's time for you to go, Purhito Gigi, you've worn out your welcome. Hades growled, I won't forget this, Ivan. Turning, he left, carrying Zancro in his arms. The boy needed immediate medical attention. Hades couldn't risk one of the 7 dying. Ivan sighed, come on Naru-chan, we have to go move the guild again before that old man comes back here with an army. Naruto approached the ruins of the city he had been looking for, silently fuming at the damage done to a place that didn't even have a mage's guild to protect it. Disgusting, he told himself as he got closer to the destroyed city, white tents coming into view. They were most likely government officials tending to the wounded. Approaching the group of tents, Naruto was stopped by a pair of guards before he could reach the camp. Identification? One of the men asked, holding out his hand expectantly. Grumbling to himself, Naruto fished out his bounty hunter license, handing it over to the man. Uzumaki Naruto, a rank bounty hunter, over 50 completed missions, the man read out loud, nodding to himself as he went. You're cleared, he told Naruto, handing back the license. I assume you're here for the bounty placed on any Grimoire Heart members, correct? Naruto nodded. Then you need to go see the captain, he'll be in the big tent with the flag. Nodding his thanks, Naruto made his way through the camp, silently wondering where all the wounded civilians were being treated. Reaching the center of the camp, Naruto found the large tent with a flag without spotting a single doctor or injured person. Something is off here, Naruto thought as he entered the tent, only for a young man to storm past him, bumping into his shoulder, offering a short apology before continuing on his way. What was his problem? Naruto asked before entering the tent. Sitting at a large desk was a young feminine man, his head resting in his hands. Dorenbolt, what am I going to do with you? Clearing his throat, Naruto got the man's attention. Huh? The man looked up from his desk, taking in Naruto's appearance. You're definitely not a solider, the man remarked as he stood up and approached Naruto. Does that mean you're here in response to the bounty? That's right, Naruto told him as he pulled out the poster that he had taken. Seems like it's for a pretty good cause, and the money is decent. The man nodded, offering his hand to Naruto. I'm Captain Lahar, and I thank you for your assistance. Grasping the man's hand, Naruto smiled. Uzumaki Naruto, happy to be of service. With a small smile, Lahar directed Naruto over to a map with several blue and red dots all over it. From what we can tell, Lahar pointed to the map. They tend to attack only cities without mage guilds, represented by the blue dots. The pattern is random and unpredictable, but the cities that they attack are always relatively close, leaving us to believe that it will be one of these two cities that they strike next. Any questions? Yeah, Naruto scratched the back of his head while inspecting the map. Why aren't you stationed at one of those cities? Lahar sighed. I asked the council that as well, but they ordered us to keep our distance. When I asked why, the only answer I received was that my job was to follow orders, not question them. Sounds like a shitty order to me, Naruto grumbled. Nodding silently, Lahar sighed again. That's how some of my younger, more restless subordinates feel. Naruto got the sneaking suspicion that Lahar was talking about someone in particular. That's besides the point though, he said, shaking his head. Your reward will depend on the number of members you bring back and their rank. Sounds fair to me, Naruto told him as he continued studying the map. Oh, there is one more thing that's bothering me. What's that? Where are the wounded civilians, and the doctors that should be here treating them? Naruto questioned, a serious look on his face. You don't know? Lahar questioned as he turned away from Naruto, indicating for the blonde to follow. Leaving the tent, Lahar directed Naruto to an open clearing. The members of Grimoire Heart never leave survivors, wounded or otherwise. Impossible, Naruto breathed out, looking over the hundreds of gravestones scattered throughout the clearing. It was impossible, nobody could be this heartless, Naruto thought as he looked out over the graveyard, his grip around his sword tightening till his knuckles turned white. Now that he was out, away from the smells of the camp, he could smell the heavy stench of death that lingered in the air like some kind of fog. I'll understand if you wish to back down from this bounty now. Abruptly, Naruto turned around facing Lahar. Back down? I'm more eager than ever to stop these bastards. His grip around his sword slowly loosened as he turned back to the clearing. I won't be able to stand idly by while something like this is happening nearby. It would be against everything my master taught me. Lahar smiled at Naruto's determination. Good, the world needs more people like you, Naruto-san. They stood in silence for a moment before one of Lahar's subordinates came running up, screaming, Captain! Captain! Naruto recognized him as the young man for earlier. His black hair was cut short, and an earring dangling from his left ear. He couldn't have been older than 15. Captain, we have new information on Grimoire Heart. He shouted, dressed in the normal Rune Knight attire. Dorenbolt? Lahar seemed surprised by his sudden appearance. What information? They've attacked the next town. Dorenbolt met his captain's stern eyes with his piercing green ones. Sir, if we move out now we could stop them. Lahar sighed. You know our orders, Dorenbolt. We can't just abandon them, that would be treason. If we break the rules, then we are no better than trash. Personally, Naruto spoke up, drawing both of the men's attention. I'd rather be trash than watch all those people die. Lahar scoffed. Personal feelings aside, orders are orders. Doranbolt was silent before pointing at Naruto. Who's that? I don't know him, but I really want to know. Doranbolt shouted in frustration as he gripped his head. Weird guy, Naruto thought to himself as he watched the young rune knight's reaction to his presence. Not again, Lahar sighed inwardly at his subordinate's actions. Doranbolt, Lahar shouted, this is Uzumaki Naruto, the man who responded to your flyer. His flyer? Naruto questioned. Yes, Doranbolt was the one who suggested we post the flyers. He's the only one? The rune knight asked. Sorry to disappoint you guy, but yeah, I'm the only one. Doranbolt sighed in defeat. I'll have to do so. Tell me what town they're attacking. Sakawa, Doranbolt muttered disappointedly. Right. Naruto nodded, swinging his sword over his shoulder. Guess I should head that way then. Walking past the dejected Doranbolt, Naruto stopped. You know, if you feel this strongly about something, then you should follow your heart, rules be damned. After that he disappeared in a flash of golden light. Hey, Lahar shouted after him, don't go corrupting my subordinates. Turning around, Lahar found that Doranbolt was no longer there. Damn, he muttered. Speeding through the forest, Naruto found himself in a dilemma. He could use Senko, Flash, to get there faster, but there would be a small drain in his reserves, and if his opponents were strong then he might need that extra little bit of energy, but if he didn't use Senko then there was a possibility that Grimoire would be gone by the time he got there. Damn it, Naruto thought to himself. Hey, someone shouted from behind him. Turning around, Naruto saw it was the young rune knight from earlier running to catch up to him. Oh hey Doranbolt, wasn't it? Come to join the fun? Doranbolt was now dressed in what appeared to be more combat-related attire. Dressed in a dark red coat with an upright collar, and 2 long yellow arm warmers. He wore white shoes with black pants. I thought about what you said, Naruto-san, about following your heart, and you're right. I joined the army because I thought I would be helping people, but for all my accomplishments I haven't saved a single person, but that changes today. Hey, Naruto chuckled, his inner struggle over with. Let's see if you can keep up then, Doranbolt. Mest, he shouted, my friends call me Mest. Smiling, Naruto disappeared in a yellow flash. Like I said, let's see if you can keep up, Mest. Rusty Rose sighed apathetically as he walked through the rubble of yet another destroyed city. Parts of it were on fire thanks to Zancro's antics, further up the road coaxing people to come out so he could burn them. He sighed once more at the fact that he had been paired with someone so brutish. In the corner of his vision he saw a small girl, possibly no older than 7, crying over her mother's lifeless body. Trash, he thought as he transformed his arm into a claw-like sword and approached the girl. They were all trash, lucky to be breathing the same air as him. As Rusty Rose approached the girl he began to grow irritated with her constant crying, looking forward to the silence her death would bring. As he got within striking distance though he felt a foot connect with his stomach sending him flying backwards. Landing a few feet away he regained his composure and met the gaze of a young green-eyed man. Ah, perhaps heaven has seen fit to grant me some entertainment on this the most troublesome of days? Mest growled as he stood in front of the girl defensively. Run. He told her as the girl got to her feet and ran away. Mest inspected his opponent, Rusty Rose. He was a tall and lanky young man with silvery-colored hair in a pompadour style. He wore what appeared to be silver designer glasses and a dark purple jacket with a flipped-up collar, complete with fur trimming. A grayish shirt was what he wore underneath the jacket that has a belt over it that wrapped around his waist. Also he wore long black pants with blue shoes. Finally, he sported white designer gloves with his Grimoire Heart member stamp located on a band around his left arm sleeve. How dare you attack these innocent people? Mest shouted as he got ready for a fight with one of the 7 kin of purgatory. HMPH, these people are nothing more than pieces of trash for me to dispose of. Rusty Rose told him as he pushed his glasses back up. Damn you, Mest growled out before charging straight at the blonde. Fool, Rusty Rose muttered at witnessing Mest's pathetic attack. Zancro laughed manically at the burnt corpses that surrounded him. They were all weak, and if you were weak you deserved to get burned. He laughed some more. Come on out, you cowards. You weaklings. I'll burn you all down to ash right now and end your pathetic lives. He continued to laugh like a made man. There were still plenty of weaklings for him to burn. You ha ha ha. Zancro laughed as he found the body of a dead man, unburned. Burn. He laughed again. I'll burn everything. Shouting, he launched a fireball at the corpse, watching in sick pleasure as it caught fire. "Wow, you haven't changed a bit." A voice spoke up from behind Zancro, forcing the psychopath to turn around, finding Naruto watching him with disgusted eyes. His sword swung over his shoulder. "Do I know you?" Zancro asked as he launched a fireball at Naruto, watching as it consumed the blonde. "Guess not. You ha 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 ha." Zancro's laughter died in his throat as he watched his fire was eaten by the mysterious blonde-haired man. "Impossible. Nobody can eat the fires of a god." Naruto smirked. "Honestly, I'm surprised you don't remember me. I'm the guy who kicked your ass and tried to steal your powers. You don't mind if I finish the job, do you? After all, I hate leaving a job like that halfway done." Zancro took a step back as Naruto approached him. "You see, I can eat fire, though honestly that was my first time attempting it in a real fight, but when I try to produce the stuff myself I just get little sparks. If you let me finish the job I'm sure I would be able to fix the problem." Taking another step forward, Naruto was met with retaliation in the form of a fireball to his face. Consuming the fire before it could hit his face, Naruto groaned as he held his stomach. Your fire tastes terrible." "It's not possible," Zancro thought as Naruto continued to defy the gods by eating their fire. "Nobody should be able to eat my god Slayer flames." Hearing Naruto's comment on how his flames tasted made Zancro growl. "Damn it. Why won't you just burn? Die and turn to ash." Engine no Bansen. Fire God's Supper. Clapping his hands together, Zancro formed a giant mouth-shaped attack out of black fire. The attack consuming Naruto. "Now you're trapped. You'll burn for good this time and turn into ashes." "Yuhei." Naruto chuckled darkly as he stood in the attack. Opening his mouth slightly, he began to suck the black flames into his mouth until they were completely gone. Laughing at the look on Zancro's face, Naruto began to approach him, his hair shadowing his eyes. "You know, there is a good reason why I don't like using other mages' magic." Looking up at Zancro, he smirked at the teen's scared expression. "It's because to use their magic I have to adopt their attitude." Zancro took a step back, unable to break contact with Naruto's eyes. They had red pupils, with several eccentric circles around them, just like his. What are you?" "Me?" Naruto questioned, holding his arms out, his sheathed sword still clutched in his left hand. "I'm you. You ha 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 ha." Mest stood across from Rusty Rose, panting heavily while blood ran down the left side of his face. He had foolishly attempted a head-on charge, and had gotten slashed across the left side of his face by Rusty Rose's claw-like hand. He was personally just glad to still have his left eye intact, though blood kept getting into it, forcing him to keep it closed. Now in between him and Rusty Rose stood an enormous, armored creature that could easily turn Mest into a bloody smear on the sidewalk with a single punch. What type of magic is this? The young rune knight wondered. Perhaps a combination of takeover magic and summoning? You're curious, aren't you? Rusty Rose asked as he pushed his glasses up once more. You're curious about what type of magic I use, aren't you? Wondering how anything in this world could be so perfect, so beautiful. Just hurry up and tell me what type of magic it is so I can figure out how to beat it, you pompous windbag. My magic is imagination, the arc of embodiment. It is a perfect magic that can't be beaten, a magic that allows me to materialize whatever I want. Mest faltered. No, that's crazy. That type of magic doesn't exist. Ha, Rusty Rose laughed. The embodiment of dreams is connected to the root of all magic. It is an invincible and unbeatable magic. It can never be bested. Mest cursed. There has to be a way to get past his defenses. Dairakuto Rain, direct line, he whispered. Fading from existence, he reappeared within striking distance of Rusty Rose, only for his kick to be blocked by a golden shield from Rusty Rose's left hand. Acting quickly, he teleported away from Rusty Rose just in time to avoid getting hit by the Shukoku no Tsurugi. Jet black sword. Appearing several feet away from his opponent, Mest started to think of a plan when something behind him blocked out the sun. What? Turning, his eye widened, as a giant fist was coming down on him. No time, Mest thought as the fist closed the distance. Trash, Rusty Rose thought when he saw Mest about to be crushed. It seemed to be a perfect ending for someone so weak when something crashed into Rusty Rose, breaking his concentration and forcing Shugo Seiju Jinrai no Barukusetsu to vanish. Guardian Saint Beast. Belkas's the thunderclap, Rusty Rose groaned, finding that it had been an unconscious Zancro that had crashed into him. That worried him slightly though. Who was strong enough to knock out Zancro? Naruto stood by Mest, helping him to his feet. You alright? Why yeah, I think so, Mest told him, amazed by the fact that Naruto didn't have a single scratch on him. Good, Naruto nodded, watching their opponent as he pushed Zancro off of him. Damn, I was just about to absorb the rest of his powers, Naruto thought. Probably for the better though, the mindset I have to be in to use it is too risky. Stay back Mest, I'll take care of this. Nodding, the young rune knight knew when to back down. Hold this for me, Naruto said, tossing his sword to Mest. So, Naruto spoke as he approached Rusty Rose. Why do you do it? Do what? The silver-haired man questioned venomously as he got to his feet. He was cautious, this was the man who just beat one of the seven kin after all, and from the looks of it he didn't even have a single scratch on him. This, Naruto waved his arm around. Death and destruction. Why do you do it? Is it how you get your sick kicks? Or does it make you feel strong knowing you can kill a bunch of defenseless civilians? Hey, Rusty Rose scoffed. We do it because they are weak, and defenseless civilians, they are trash. If they were strong mages then we wouldn't need to bother with them. You disgust me, Naruto whispered. The demon's magic was starting to flood his system, forcing his once cerulean eyes to turn blood red. You disgust me, he shouted this time, making Rusty Rose take a cautious step backwards. Onimaho, Noroshi, demon magic. Rocket, holding out his open palm towards Rusty Rose, Naruto launched a deep crimson-red rocket of pure demonic magic. The silver-haired man scoffed once more, that which dwells in my left hand is a golden shield that pushes back everything. An elegant golden shield materialized out of thin air, holding it in front of himself. Rusty Rose smirked. Nothing can get past Ogon no Tate. Never take your eyes off your opponent, Naruto whispered to Rusty Rose from behind him. His eyes widening in shock, Rusty Rose began to turn around when Naruto grabbed him by the neck, draining his magic. As Rusty Rose passed into darkness, he saw that where Naruto had been standing was a black hole with a red edge. Mest watched amazed as Naruto dropped an unconscious Rusty Rose to the ground. Earlier when Rusty Rose had summoned his shield, Naruto literally tore a hole into the universe and disappeared into it, only to again reappear undetected behind Rusty Rose. Watching in stunned silence, Mest saw the attack Naruto had launched earlier approach the blonde. With a simple wave of his hand, Naruto had sent the attack sailing into the sky, exploding like a firework after several hundred feet. Just what are you, Naruto-san? Scratching the back of his head, Naruto smiled and approached Mest. Well, that was lucky. If this guy was more experienced that would have been a hell of a fight, Naruto chuckled. Smiling at the man's antics, Mest chuckled with him. That was amazing, Naruto-san. Eh? Naruto scratched the back of his head. You're too formal, you can drop the sand stuff. Alright Naruto-Nisan, Mest smiled. Huh, older brother, Naruto smiled, I like it. Turning around, Naruto faced the two beaten kin of purgatory. Bringing in 2 of the 7 kin should be good enough for your captain to forgive you. Mest chuckled, I don't know about that. Lahar-san is a very strict man. Most likely. Mest stopped though, feeling an odd presence, his eyes widening. Naruto-Nisan, look out, Mest shouted, just as the earth under Naruto exploded. And just when I thought, a new opponent appeared before Mest. I had found a worthy opponent. He was a tall, muscular man with tanned skin, brown eyes, a goatee, long sideburns, and brown hair that looked like long dark, leathery strips of confetti jutting out in all directions. He had a straight dark streak running from his left eye that extended up to the top of his forehead and down to his mid-cheek. He was dressed in ornate Renaissance-style clothing that had shoulder and leg flaps, and light green in the middle. His pants were bright orange and he wore white shoes. He had 2 silver crescent-shaped earrings, 1 in each ear. His member stamp was located on his left shoulder strap. The man's gaze left the billowing cloud of smoke, where Naruto had been standing, and landed on Mest. And now all that is left is a cowering child. Damn it, Mest shouted, that guy was in a league all his own. His magic energy dwarfing the other 2. Let's get this over with, the man said with a rather bored tone. Don't count me out yet, punk. Naruto shouted, the smoke around him finally dying down, revealing that the explosion had only singed his clothes. Almost got me there, Naruto thought to himself. Thankfully he had just enough time to use the demonic magic to harden his skin, and negate the explosion. Mest, I need you to get out of here. Find as many civilians as you can and run. But Naruto-Nisan, this guy is stronger than the other two, you might need my help. Mest shouted. I know he's stronger, that's why I need you to get out of here so I don't have to hold back. Naruto turned to him flashing a smile, don't worry, I won't die so easily. But Mest hesitated for a moment, before throwing Naruto his sword. Alright, please don't die, Naruto-Nisan. Catching the blade, Naruto removed its sheath with a flick of his wrist, watching as Mest teleported away from the battlefield. Turning back to Azuma, Naruto frowned. Nice of you to wait for me to be ready like that, despite trying to blow me up earlier. You look like a promising opponent, so long as you are strong I do not mind waiting. You don't have to worry about that. Naruto shouted, swinging his sword, an arch of light magic bursting forth. Crossing his arms, Azuma created several layers of curved tree roots that acted as a shield. Lowering his arms, the roots disappeared back underground, leaving Azuma unscratched from Naruto's attack. My name is Azuma, my magic is the magic of the trees. Lost magic. Great tree arc. The explosion you saw earlier was created by condensing the magic in the earth into the fruit of the trees. The true power of this magic is rooted in the earth though. It controls all of the magical power stored within the earth itself. Well, I'm Uzumaki Naruto, and the best way to explain my magic is to show you firsthand, the blonde said, his sword resting on his shoulder. I can't wait, Azuma told him, a small smirk on his face. With that said, Naruto leapt forward, sending another wave of light magic from his sword. Azuma countered again in the same way as before, only this time Naruto used Senko to get behind him, reappearing with his sword poised to strike. Turning quickly, Azuma avoided the thrust, using his momentum to backhand Naruto, only for the blonde to disappear in another flash of light magic. You're good, Naruto shouted to Azuma, now standing several feet away. Stabbing his blade into the ground, he cracked his neck. This will be the most serious fight I've had in a long time. Holding out his hands like a pair of pistols, Naruto smiled, time to get serious. Kamaho. Teppo. Light magic. Gun. Azuma proceeded to skillfully dodge to bullets as he charged Naruto, good. He muttered as 4 roots shot from the ground and tried to wrap around Naruto's limbs. Noticing the roots, Naruto flashed to a different location just as they were about to grab him. Can't allow him to wrap me up in those roots, I don't want to know how big he can make those explosions. Turning around and charging after Naruto once again, Azuma extended his hand and aimed a finger at Naruto, releasing a thin linear shockwave at Naruto. Not a moment later, the entire length of the line was engulfed in devastating explosions. Damn it, Naruto shouted as he rolled out of the way of the explosions. Keeping his distance with someone that could make the earth explode at any given time was a pain. Let's see how he liked this then. Kamaho. Wamako. Light magic. 10 celestial lights. Behind Naruto appeared a circle of 10 floating miniature stars. My only defensive spell, good for 10 attacks or 10 blocks, Naruto thought to himself, better not waste it, it's a bitch to keep up. Meeting Azuma in his charge, they began an exchange of hand-to-hand combat. What appended to your speed? Azuma questioned as he blocked Naruto's kick with a raised leg. Is it perhaps too difficult to use while using those stars? Utsu. Attack, was Naruto's only reply as one of the stars started to glow and shot forward, hitting the surprised Azuma in the chest. Following up the star's strike with another kick, Naruto sent the older man flying back several feet. Wamako was my master's personal move. I can't use it to the same proficiency that he could, but it gets the job done. Interesting, Azuma muttered as he wiped the trail of blood from the corner of his mouth. Extending his hand, Azuma shouted, Brevi. Brevi. Italian plural word for short, indicating the distance from one point to the other. The area directly in front of him was consumed in an explosion, including Naruto. Once the smoke died down, Naruto was shown to be completely unharmed. The only difference was that out of the original 10 stars that were floating behind him, now only 7 were left. You see, Naruto pointed behind him, indicating to the now 7 stars. The old man was amazing with this spell that no matter how strong the opposing attack was, he could make 2 or 3 barriers with a single star before it faded. I on the other hand need to use at least 2 or more depending on how strong the spell is. I see, Azuma got to his feet, keeping his eyes on Naruto. This spell is not only offensive but defensive as well. Utsu! Utsu! Naruto shouted as two stars shot forward. Dodging the first one, Azuma was hit in the leg with the second one. Flinching, he resisted the urge to rub his leg. It felt like he had just been stabbed by a white-hot blade. A powerful attack. I would no doubt be dead if it managed to hit me in the head. Charging straight for Naruto, Azuma dodged another star as it shot towards him. Let's see how well the defense stands up to this. Tawa Basuto. Tower burst. Getting closer to Naruto, Azuma called out his attack and extended both of his arms out to his sides, summoning an enormous tower of explosive flames. Shit, Naruto muttered once the attack had died down. He had been forced to use up the rest of his stars to create a barrier strong enough to hold up to the attack. You were good, Azuma muttered. But still not good enough, Basuto Kuro. Burst claw. A root shot out from underground, right next to Naruto and exploded. Cursing, Naruto tried to jump away only for the root to sideswipe him. Being sent skidding across the ground, Naruto came to a stop eventually. Getting up, he coughed up a lungful of blood. Wasn't expecting it to sideswipe me like that. He though clutching his ribs. You've let your guard down, Azuma told him, just in time for several roots to entangle Naruto's limbs. The blonde didn't have time to think as suddenly the roots exploded, dealing massive damage to his arms and legs. Falling to the ground, Naruto did have the energy to brace himself as he hit the ground hard. You were a strong opponent, but compared to me you were still weak. Naruto looked up to see Azuma standing over him, a bored look in his eyes. And now you will die because of this weakness. Panting heavily, Naruto watched as Azuma raised his foot. Looks like I don't have a choice but to use that spell. Gathering his demonic energy, Naruto's eyes shifted over to Crimson Red, Onimaho, Kakan. Demon Magic. Demon Soul. In a burst of crimson light that forced Azuma to jump back and cover his eyes, Naruto began to transform. In the light, a pair of leathery bat-like wings burst through his back with a sickening squelch, dripping with blood. From his temples a pair of forward-pointing horns grew. His teeth became sharper, his ears becoming longer ending in a point, and he grew a long black tail with a trident-like tip. Azuma took a cautious step back at what he saw once the crimson light had died down. What is this? He questioned upon feeling how heavy Naruto's magic was. Flexing his arms and legs, Naruto smirked, good as new. His voice was darker, more gravely. Hearing Azuma's question, Naruto looked up and chuckled. I suppose you could say that I also have a lost magic. Flexing his wings, Naruto disappeared in a burst of speed, reappearing in front of Azuma, his fist planted in the older man's stomach. Incredible, Naruto thought as Azuma doubled over in pain. Grabbing him by the back of his shirt, Naruto threw him away like a piece of trash. And this is with only using 15% of the demon's magic. Imagine what I could do at 100%. Wicked thoughts crossed Naruto's mind, his tail twitching in excitement. Lost in his dark thoughts, Naruto felt something was wrong, suddenly realizing something. No, these are the demon's thoughts, trying to confuse me. The sudden boost in power almost made me forget the threat that comes with using this spell. Taking a few calming breaths, Naruto regained his composure. 5 minutes, that's how long I can use this form, and that's how long it will take to beat that guy down. From where he had landed, Azuma started to get back up on his knees. It had felt like a train had hit him in the stomach earlier where that demon punched him. For a moment he truly felt that he was going to die under that beast's incredible presence. Once this is over, I will have to ask Master Hades if he has heard about this type of lost magic before. Magic that can turn men into demons. There you are, Naruto shouted from the sky, his bat-like wings proving to be for more than just show. Do me a favor and hold still, will you? Cocking his fist back, Naruto threw a punch, sending a burst of demonic energy forward in the shape of his fist. Quickly leaping out of the way of the attack, Azuma was surprised by his destructive power when it formed a small crater on impact. Damn, I said hold still. Naruto sent out another energy fist. I don't want to destroy the city more than it already is. Dodging another punch, Azuma raised his hand towards Naruto, an explosion consuming the blonde. With a flap of his wings, Naruto cleared the smoke around him, appearing to be completely unharmed by the attack. Dusting himself off, Naruto looked down at the stunned man. Was that supposed to do something? Azuma's eyes widened in fear for half a second before they narrowed slightly. I'm afraid we'll have to cut this fight short. I enjoyed fighting someone of your caliber. I look forward to our next meeting. With that, Azuma disappeared with the use of a teleportation spell. What? Naruto questioned. Suddenly something dawned on him, racing back to where the two he had fought with earlier. Arriving at where their unconscious bodies should have been, Naruto wasn't surprised to find that they too were gone. Damn, he muttered as he slowly drifted back to the ground. Landing, his body began to change back to normal, grimacing in pain as his wings retreated back into his back, as well as his tail. Well, this sucks, he thought out loud as he retrieved his sword and its sheath. A few miles away from the city, Mest was watching the road intently, the left side of his face wrapped up in bandages, along with at least 100 people he had found on his way out. Just a few moments ago he had sensed an overwhelming magical energy coming from where he assumed Naruto and the strange man had been fighting. "Come on, Naruto-Nisan," he whispered. "I see someone." A civilian with a pair of binoculars shouted. "What does he look like?" Mest questioned, hopeful that it was Naruto, but prepared in case it was one of the seven kin. "Long blonde hair, and he's got a sword." Mest sighed in relief. "That's him then, the man who saved you." Naruto was surprised when a large group of people rushed him. The men were shaking his hand, while the women offered their thanks, and children hugged his waist. Naruto scratched the back of his head, smiling. "You're welcome. Happy to have helped." The crowd cheered, lifting him up on someone's shoulders. "Whoa, whoa," Naruto shouted as the overexcited people carried him around. Later, Naruto and Mest were seen leading the group of people back to the knight's camp in Ochi. "So," Naruto asked, "what is the usual punishment for insubordination?" "It depends on how severe the crime is. Most likely I will go to jail for several years, or if the council isn't feeling very gracious, there is a chance that I will be executed." Naruto gulped at that, clutching his neck. "And you're sure you want to, go back? I could just tell your captain you died in the fight." "No," Mest shook his head. "I must go back and face the consequence of my actions." Naruto sighed. "You're a brave kid, Mest. A little thick-headed, but your heart's in the right place." He smiled. "Thank you, Naruto-Nisan." "Hey," Naruto spoke up after a few minutes of silence. "Do you think I'll still get my reward for just bringing in information instead of a member of the guild?" "I don't know, Naruto-Nisan, but I really want to know." Mest grabbed his head again. Sighing, Naruto continued to walk with the now muttering Mest, still a weird kid. Arriving at the camp, Naruto and Mest were rushed to the captain while the knights hurried to treat the injured. Entering the tent, Naruto and Mest were surprised to see Lahar waiting for them. "My scouts told me that there was a large group of people headed this way, led by a blonde-haired man carrying a sword, so I assumed it was you." Lahar smiled slightly. "I assume you succeeded." Naruto chuckled. "In a way, yes." Indicating Lahar to sit down, Naruto began to tell him every detail of the three he had fought, from their looks right down to what they were capable of. He even told the speechless captain why they attacked defenseless towns. After an hour-long discussion, Lahar finally smiled. "Amazing that you were capable of fighting off not only one but three of the rumored seven kin of purgatory." He chuckled. "I hope you're prepared for the repercussions of what has happened today." "Repercussions?" Naruto asked. "Of course, you think those hundred-some-odd people out there are just going to stay quiet? I imagine that your name is going to spread like wildfire soon. Stories will be written about how you fought off the guild master himself along with several hundred of his followers to save the city." Lahar chuckled. "Give it a month or two and I bet you'll have every guild in fury beating down your door, asking you to join their ranks." Naruto scratched the back of his head. "That's a bit much, don't you think?" In a few months' time, Naruto would look back at this day and curse the captain for how right he was. Off to the side, Mest had waited quietly for someone to say something to him. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. "Excuse me, Captain, what about me?" "Huh?" Lahar looked over to Mest. "Do I know you?" What, Captain, it's me. You kind of remind me of one of my subordinates, Dorenbolt. Unfortunately, he died a few days ago, crushed by falling debris while trying to dig out some injured civilians." Lahar smiled slightly at the wide-eyed Mest. He turned to Naruto. "Is this your apprentice, Naruto-san?" Smiling, Naruto nodded. "Yeah, that's my apprentice, Mest." "I see." Lahar nodded. "Take good care of him, then he looks like a good kid." Naruto chuckled. "Yeah." Turning to look at Mest, he saw that tears were falling down his face. "He is." "See, Captain," Mest croaked out, "thank you." While bowing his head, Lahar shrugged, a neutral look on his face. "I don't know why you're thanking me, after all I've never met you before." Naruto smiled to himself. Mest was right, Lahar was a strict man, but deep down he could tell that he really cared for the safety and happiness of his subordinates. Well, Naruto stood up. I think it's time we hit the road, Mest, don't you agree? Of course, Naruto-Nisan. Mest stood up, unable to lift his eyes. Before you go, Lahar stood up, pulling a large pouch of jewels from his coat pocket. Here's your reward money. I can't accept that. Naruto almost fell back into his seat at seeing how large the pouch was. This is the money that everyone chipped for a reward because they weren't allowed to do anything about the Grimoire Heart threat. It would be rude not to accept it. Cautiously Naruto took the pouch from Lahar. Thank you. Naruto stuttered out, still shocked at how large the pouch was. No, Naruto-san, Lahar smiled, thank you. Later that day Mest and Naruto were seen walking side by side down the road in silence, both reflecting on what had happened that day. Finally Mest spoke up, what now? The left side of his face was still bandaged. After having a doctor check it out before they left, he had been told that it was fine but it would scar. Now? Naruto shrugged his shoulders. We wander the world for a bit, get stronger. And after that? Naruto shrugged again. I guess we choose a guild to settle down with then. Okay, Mest said, nodding. 3 months later. Are you sure? Mest questioned cautiously. The bandages on his face had been removed, and a set of crisscrossing scars stretch across the left side of his face. Have I ever steered you wrong? Naruto questioned as he stood outside of the giant door. Well, that time with the giant spiders. Do you always have to bring that up? Naruto grumbled, this is different anyways. I know, that's why I want to make sure you're sure before we go barging in there, Naruto-Nisan. Naruto scoffed, of course I'm sure, well, mostly sure, kind of. You know what? No, I'm not sure actually. He shrugged, but don't you want to know what it's like? Know what it's like? Mest repeated. Yeah, haven't you ever wondered what it's like to be a part of a guild? Naruto egged him on with a smile. I have, Mest muttered while holding his head, I have wondered what it's like to be a part of a guild. Well then, now that that's settled, let's go in. Walking forward, Naruto opened the giant doors and walked in, Mest following behind him. Slowly the doors closed, revealing the symbol of fairy tale. Naruto sighed as he looked over the request board. Nothing seemed to interest him at the moment. Walking over to the balcony, he leaned on the railing and looked out over fairy tale. Such a lively place, he thought to himself as his eyes scanned everyone below. It had been hard at first gaining everyone's trust, but after being announced as Fairy Tail's newest S-class mage a few weeks ago, he had felt that he had truly accomplished something when he went on stage with the whole guild applauding him. He smiled lamely as he watched Natsu and Gray begin to fight, only for Erza to break it up before it could escalate, like one big family. A year had passed since he joined the guild, and though he always wanted to remember what he had done in his past, and where he had originally came from, he found it harder and harder to think back to before he had met his master. I think there was a girl that I liked, Sokka or something like that. I wonder how she is. And Sensei, I wonder if he's still teaching? And the old man, I wonder if he's still kicking? He scratched his head in frustration. The memories were there, but they were fading. Sometimes he could remember names but not faces, and other times he would recall a face but not know the name. Each day it became harder and harder to remember. Even his time spent as the demon of the mountain was hazy. I remember pain and death and expressions frozen in fear. I remember being so happy when people would wander too close to my mountain, and then I remember great sadness and Ivan finding me. Now he was something of a hero in the eyes of the people, most of them calling him Yusha. Hero, he had something of an image to keep up, even more so than any of the other S-rank mages. He found it slightly annoying, but he couldn't help but like the attention everyone gave him everywhere he went. And Master Makarov told him that his action figures that they sold in the gift shop helped pay for the numerous bills Fairy Tail paid for property damage. Sighing, Naruto spotted Mest down below, chatting happily with everyone. He had grown in the past year, Naruto's sword strapped to his back proof of that. Damn kid, who knew he'd be such a fast learner? It had been a long time since they went on a mission together. Turning back to the board, Naruto eyed it once more. He sighed again. He wouldn't feel comfortable taking Mest out with him on any of these missions. Oh well, Naruto thought with a smile as he turned around, seeing Mest laughing with Gray and Loke. He's fallen in with a good group. Running his hand through his hair, the ponytail reaching his shoulder blades now, Naruto examined the request board. At 19 he hadn't grown at all. his height maxing out at 185 centimeters, but he had grown in strength. In the argument of who was the strongest in Fairy Tail, many argued it was him, instead of Mistogen or Laxus, and in all honesty Naruto felt like he could fight evenly with either of the two S-class powerhouses, but he continued to tell people that he could never accept the title of strongest so long as Gildarts was still around. Leaning back against the railing with his elbows, Naruto pulled off a random request and examined it. Large group of Rouge Knights harassing village. Sounds more like an Erza job. Naruto mumbled to himself as he put the posting back on the board. Monster terrorizing citizens. Now that sounds more like a Naruto job. The blonde smiled as he vanished from the upstairs in a small flash of golden light, reappearing downstairs by the bar. Mira-chan, I'm going on this job. He smiled as he handed the white-haired girl the poster, only for her to frown. Naruto, this is a two-person job. I can't let you go alone. Mira frowned at the blonde, hands on her hips, trying to decide if he had skimmed over that part, or had been trying to ignore it. Mira-chan, don't give me that look. Naruto pouted, I can totally handle the job myself. Mira frowned, crossing her arms over her chest. Naruto confirming her suspicions. Naruto waved his arms frantically, taking a cautious step backwards. I Mira-chan, I'll just go find someone to take with me then. Quickly disappearing into the crowded guild, Naruto let out a sigh of relief, happy to escape without a lecture for once. Most lectures ended in Mira threatening to stop making ramen. Now to choose who to take with me. Scanning the guild, Naruto's eyes landed on Erza first. 2. Overkill. Natsu. 2. Destructive. Gray. 2. Naked. Elfman. 2. Actually, he would be perfect for this mission. With a smile on his face, Naruto started to make his way over to Elfman when he froze in mid-step. A disturbing thought in his mind. What will Mira-chan do to me if I try to take her little brother with me on an S-rank mission? With that thought in mind, Naruto stood rooted to his position before he made up his mind and walked away. Elfman. 2. Troublesome. Of course, messed. Naruto thought as he looked around the room, only to find that his apprentice was nowhere to be seen. Messed. 2. Missing. Trudging back to the bar, Naruto was wondering if he would be able to sweet-talk Mira into letting him do the job anyways when he spotted someone sitting at the corner of the bar by themselves. It's Kana, he thought as he watched her lift up a giant barrel of alcohol. They were good friends, or at least they used to be. Ever since he had beaten her in the last S-class promotion trial, Kana had stopped talking to him altogether. Maybe if I invite her along with me on an S-class job, she'll start talking to me. Kana sighed from her position at the bar, downing another barrel of alcohol. From the corner of her eye she could see Naruto making his way towards her. The blonde was dressed in an open form-fitting black jacket with orange lining. Underneath the jacket he wore an orange tank top with blue lining. Holding up his ragged-looking black jeans were a pair of crisscrossing white belts with circular buckles. For footwear he had on a pair of geta with orange straps. Hey Kana, Naruto waved as he approached her, trying not to shrink at a slight glare sent his way. Kana berated herself for glaring at Naruto. It wasn't that she hated the blonde, she still wanted to be considered a close friend, but she still wasn't very happy with the results of the last promotion trial. The thing she was most disappointed with was herself. Makarov, along with the present S-ranked mages, stood up on a stage in the middle of the Colosseum. He was currently addressing all of the S-rank hopefuls, Naruto and Kana being two of the candidates. This year's trial will be a tournament. He shouted with his arms spread wide, to become an S-rank you must prove that you are ready, and we will judge if you are by watching your fight. You do not have to win to get the promotion. You merely have to prove that you are ready for the responsibility that being an S-rank mages brings. What a load of crap, Naruto muttered to Kana. Making us fight each other to prove if we're ready. Shush, was Kana's only reply. Naruto frowned, so mean Kana-chan tilde. Quiet Naruto. She whispered harshly, this is our future, it's important. Naruto tsked, as he stuck his pinky in his ear. I'm happy being in A- rank, less responsibility, and I get to goof off more. What's with you by the way? You never do what you're told to do unless it involves this stupid promotion. Kana opened her mouth to retort when they felt Erza's magical presence crash into them. Master was explaining something important to you too. Erza's steel-like gaze settled on Naruto. Master, since they have something so important to talk about, might I suggest that they discuss it in the ring? Now Erza, Makarov started off saying, what he had been talking about hadn't been that important, but before he could continue Naruto interrupted him. Wait, did I get that right? You want me to fight Kana-chan just because we were talking? Naruto's eyes flashed red. Did I hear you right, Scarlet? Erza's eyes narrowed. You heard me right, Uzumaki, but it's not just because you were talking, it's to prove that you really have what it takes to become an S rank. Naruto tsked, then I drop out of the running. I refuse to participate in such a ridicules game. I refuse to fight my nakama. You refuse? Erza questioned, her power surging. This is a tradition, Uzumaki, and if you refuse to participate then nobody is allowed to participate and nobody will get the promotion. From behind Erza Laxus laughed madly. Haha, let him quite. As far as I'm concerned no one here is ready. Naruto, Kana pleaded. I don't want to fight you either, but we have to. Naruto hesitated looking into Kana's eyes, before he shook his head, crossing his arms over his chest. I won't fight you, no matter what. All of the other mages gathered shouted at Naruto, pleading with him, but he wouldn't budge from his position. The crowd was shocked though when something struck Naruto in the chest, sending him flying backwards through the air. The shouting had stopped and everyone turned to see Kana standing there, with her cards out. I'm sorry Naruto, but I need this. So please fight back, because even if you don't I won't hold back. Naruto laid on his back on the ground staring up at the sky. He was quiet for a minute before speaking. Go ahead then if it means that much to you. Kana gripped her cards shakily, tears threatening to fall from her eyes. Naruto, get up. Defend yourself. She brought a card up and charged it with magical energy. Please Naruto. She shouted, but the blonde refused to even look up at her. Kana's arm began to shake. She would do it. She had to do it. She couldn't do it. Her arm fell to her side, and she fell to her knees, her cards slipping from her now loose grip. Damn it Naruto, she cried, damn it damn it damn it. From his place on the stage Makarov sighed, this year's S-Class Wizard promotion trial is over, and I Makarov, third master of Fairy Tail, see fit to grant the title of S-rank mage to Uzumaki Naruto. Everyone except the current S-rank mages seemed surprised at this. I grant him this title for being the only one in this group to understand the value of his nakama. Kana sighed as Naruto sat down next to her, a lame smile on his face. So Kana, he paused for a minute, trying to think of what to say before sighing. We haven't really talked very much these past couple of months, have we? He chuckled, if I know you you're probably just mad at yourself, and you're probably worried that I'm mad at you. B baka, Kana shouted, a blush on her cheeks. I'm definitely mad at you. Naruto stuck his pinky in his ear and rolled his eyes. Sure, whatever you say Kana-chan tilde. Kana seethed silently, the blush on her cheeks darkening. So listen, Naruto started, I want to make it up to you, really I do. So how about you come on an S-rank mission with me? S-rank? Kana thought in excitement. Really? She asked. Of course. Naruto smiled, scratching the back of his head. But, after the way I've been treating you. Naruto sighed. Kana, come on, you're my nakama, a precious friend. Do you really think I would be mad at you for what you did for even a second? Kana clenched her fist, tears prickling at the corner of her eyes. Baka. She smiled as Naruto laughed. She had really missed that sound. This is the town, Naruto said as they departed from the train station. They were at the town center, where many people were out selling their goods at stands. Just to the left of the town, behind the houses was a small forest. After looking around, Naruto muttered to Kana, do these people look like they're being terrorized by a monster to you? Watching as people chattered amongst themselves happily, she noted that there were no signs of a monster attack. Are you sure this is the right place? Of course, Naruto muttered, but something is definitely off. Walking over to one of the street vendors, Naruto smiled at the young woman behind the counter. Excuse me miss, I'm a mage sent from Fairy Tail to help you get rid of your monster problems. Can you explain to me what's been going on around here? The girl smiled in return. Please, leave while you still can. Eh? Naruto asked. Naruto, Kana tugged on his arm, dragging him away from the stand. Something is wrong here, very wrong. I kind of got that already, Kana-chan, but before he could continue, Naruto was interrupted from the screams of a young girl. Her face was covered by a hood, but she was being chased by a mob. Someone save me please, she shouted as she ran straight into Naruto. Please, she shouted as she looked up at Naruto. Acting on instinct, Naruto pushed the girl behind him and shielded her from the mob. What's going on here? He shouted. Something was wrong though. The mob, all of them have such a horrified expression, like they think someone is about to kill them. Suddenly Naruto felt something cold touch the back of his head, painfully pulling something out of him. Naruto! Kana shouted as she watched the little girl reach up and grab Naruto from the back of the head, pulling out a small golden orb. Bringing the orb up to her lips, the girl swallowed it whole, and giggled madly. I'm a monster who can steal one's mind. And you are a fool. What did you do to him? Kana shouted as she drew her cards, getting ready for a fight. The girl giggled again. I told you already, didn't I? I'm a monster who can steal a person's mind. Throwing back her hood, she revealed her long golden locks and red eyes with slit pupils. What I stole from your friend was his righteous mind. Kana cursed, and the townspeople? Them? I took their courage. Why? She laughed, because now none of them are brave enough to leave and can act as bait for unexpecting travelers. Kana cursed again, looking at Naruto laying prone on the ground, to the townspeople cowering around her. Looks like I'm not going to be receiving any help. Just then she felt something club her on the back of the head. Turning around, she saw that it was one of the villagers, with a terrified look on his face. Falling to the ground, Kana cursed her luck as everything went black. Nah, Kana, Kana moaned as she struggled to open her eyes. Shut up, Baka, she mumbled when someone grabbed her wrist and forced her arms apart. Now she was awake, and looking into the red eyes of Naruto. I told you to wake up already, Kana, he told her apathetically. What? Kana asked as a blush spread across her face. Breaking free of Naruto's grip, she drew a card out. Are you doing? Naruto moved fast, grabbing Kana's hand and forcing it down. Don't object me, he told her forcefully. Naruto, Kana fought against his grip with all her strength, but he wouldn't budge. You're acting weird. Kana, what now? She shouted, still struggling in his grip. I like you. The struggling stopped as Kana's body became limp, staring into Naruto's red eyes. What did he say? Letting go of Kana, Naruto walked over to the blonde monster and forcibly yanked her up off the ground by the arm. Kana, tie her up, Naruto told her as he threw the monster to the confused girl. Catching the monster, Kana hesitated, her eyes meeting Naruto's awkwardly as a blush spread across her face. Pulling out some rope, she began to tie the monster up. The monster squeaked, "Go easy on me." What a foolish monster, Naruto scoffed. You won the situation, but you didn't finish us off. You deserve to die for such a mistake. Make sure to tie her up good so she won't be able to escape. Okay, Kana muttered, a blush still obvious on her face. Now tell me why you did to us. Naruto crossed his arms over his chest, his crimson red eyes glaring dangerously at the monster. So you won't talk? Then what should I do to make you confess? Should I break each of your fingers one by one? The monster cried and squirmed on the ground. I'm sorry. Naruto, Kana muttered quietly, like she was worried to attract his attention towards her. You're acting weird. Naruto spared her a sideways glance that made Kana flinch slightly, also making her blush deepen even more. What's wrong with me? What part of my mind did the monster take from me? You are acting weird because the monster took a part of our minds. It was the girl Naruto had been talking to earlier. She took the courage of all the people in town so no one would be brave enough to run away, and so she could force everyone to do whatever she wanted them to do. But now that you've defeated her, we don't have to be afraid anymore. Excuse me, Kana interrupted, a large blush on her face still. I'm acting very weird and obeying whatever anyone tells me to do. Did you see what part of my mind she took? Probably your I'll do whatever I want mind. Naruto thought to himself. I'm sorry, the girl muttered. I didn't see I ran away with everyone else after you were knocked out. Suddenly the monster broke free from her binding, making a dash for the nearby forest. After her, Naruto shouted as he and Kana chased the monster from to the edge of the forest. Aren't you going after her? Kana asked. No, Naruto told her as he brought up his hand and charged it with demonic energy. All I need is this. Onimaho, katana. Swinging his arm like a sword, Naruto tore up the landscape, the earth exploding as if he was dragging a giant blade along it. Ha ha ha. Naruto laughed madly as he continued to swing his arm around like a sword, kicking up dust. Trying to run away from me? Don't make me laugh. I will rule this world one day and I will become a god. The world will be mine and I am going to destroy all. No one is going to get away from me. No one can stop me. He's going to destroy the entire forest. Kana shouted as she covered her face from the dust. Then suddenly Naruto stopped swinging his arm around like it was a sword and gripped his head in pain. What? Naruto thought as he held his head in his hands. My head. What the heck happened? Kana thought as the dust began to die, her eyes bulging at what it reveled. Only one tree is left, she muttered in shock, everything else was destroyed. Around the single tree that had been left standing was a pile of brush. From the pile a hand shot out, weakly someone muttered, "Help me." After digging her out and tying her up again, Naruto set her down on her knees and glared down at her. "I will return your minds to you," she muttered. Naruto scoffed, running his hand through his hair. "That's what evil always says. To me you're the evil one here," the monster thought as a sweat drop rolled down the back of her head. "Anyways," Naruto popped his neck, "you don't have to give it back, it's better this way." "What do you mean?" the monster shouted. "My righteous mind was holding me back, without it I'm the strongest. At my current status I could rule the world and bring about its total destruction." How is this better? Kana thought to herself. When Naruto grabbed his head in pain again. "My head hurts again," Naruto mumbled. "Is it because of what you did? Why your mind is imbalanced now, that would be the cause of the pain." "God damn it," Naruto muttered as he bent over in pain. "My head hurts so much that I can't use my powers correctly." Kana looked behind her at the destroyed forest. That wasn't even his full power? "I like this power," Naruto started as another wave of pain washed over him. "But it hurts pretty badly, turn me back. Give my mind back, if you don't I'll rip off your arms and legs." Naruto brought his arm up again and built up the demonic energy, 85%, he thought to himself. "I'll give it back. I'll give it back. I'll give it back right now." Kana sighed to herself, good he'll return to his normal self again. She thought back to Naruto telling her that he liked her. So that was a lie, because he was acting weird. Yes, I was acting weird too. Kana sighed, yes it was all a lie, she told herself. Looking over at Naruto she smiled sadly as he growled in pain, for Naruto his wrath, greed, and sorrow have all been under extreme control thanks to his righteous mind. He is human though, so he definitely has those thoughts, but since everyone looks up to him as a hero he always keeps his darker thoughts in check. Right now it's safe to say that the restricted part of his mind has surfaced. Kana thought about it again, another blush reddening her cheeks. "I like you." Was that what his true feeling then? Shortly after that Naruto and Kana gathered all of the citizens together, and untied the monster. Rubbing her wrist she waved her hand, blue orbs appearing in front of all the civilians, a gold one for Naruto. "I forgot to mention that your memories of what happened while your mind was taken will be erased when you get your mind back." Everyone's respective orb disappeared into them, so long. The monster bid them farewell as they all collapsed to the ground. "Hey," Kana shouted, before the monster could leave. "What about me?" The monster tsked, "I never took your mind," she pointed to Naruto, "he stopped me before I could." But, I acted so strangely," Kana shouted with a blush. The monster smiled, "That's love." She told Kana before running away, "Farewell, and don't worry about me returning." Kana moved to stop her when Naruto got to his feet. "Ah, what the heck am I doing out here?" Kana opened her mouth to think of an excuse. There was no way she could tell Naruto that he went crazy and leveled a forest. Then the townspeople started to wake up. "What happened to the forest? Look, it's wiped out. There's no way I can explain this," Kana thought. When Naruto approached her the blush returned. "Kana, do you know what happened here? Get away from me," Kana shouted, the blush spreading across her face. "What?" Naruto took a shocked step backwards. Kana growled as she stomped towards the train station. "If you're so curious about what happened to the forest then go look for clues." "I bet there is none though." How can you leave at a time like this?" Naruto questioned, completely surprised by the way Kana was behaving. The monster that did this could come back at any time. "That was you," Kana thought to herself. "I don't care. Do whatever you want. I'm leaving." Naruto sighed. "Alright, just let me ask the citizens what happened, maybe I can get some money out of this." In the end they went back to the guild empty-handed, and without an explanation for what happened, not even knowing what happened with the monster. "Mira-chan is gonna ban ramen from the guild, I just know she will." Naruto cried to himself on the train ride back. Omake. This is the town, Naruto said as they departed from the train station. After looking around he muttered to Kana. Do these people look like they're being terrorized by a monster to you? Watching as people chattered amongst themselves happily, she noted that there were no signs of a monster attack. Are you sure this is the right place? Naruto hesitated, before pulling out a map. This is the wrong town, isn't it Naruto? Kana asked as she started to head back into the train station, shaking her head. The next train wouldn't be here for another 30 minutes, Baka, she muttered as she entered the train station, shaking her head in disappointment. Gomenasai, Naruto muttered with a hung head as he trudged into the train station behind Kana. That's all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.